just having big problems over on that side of the map, and it makes it very hard for the rest of their team to win. But Twig and Harry they've been playing well again recently, so they're going to be back to they're going to do better for sure. But obviously, Ferryman's looked like the hardest team to beat in the league.
Yeah.
So I think Kings have a shot, but it's going to be difficult for sure.
It's a lot of it's like, okay, Sino playing Ola Run Jungle, that might give you another little opportunity back into the game. It's been real fun watching. The Ferrymen have given us some really, let's call them interesting drafts that have been able to come through. And the big thing that I think stands out to me is that Saturday feels stacked again, because like last week, Dragons Kings was a really good one into a Warriors sets with the Ferrymen. Now it's Kings Ferrymen that's immediately going to Warriors Dragons, so it feels like that's just going to be a really, really good solid back-to-back Saturday. So you're not going to want to miss out on Saturday. I think that you should tune in to watch
quick set Sunday,
a very quick set 3-0 Ravens Leviathans. That has been the prediction that we've gotten out here,
real quick and easy.
And man, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited for the SPL. We're in the downward spiral at this point, right? Because we got this week with 3 days. Next week it's only Saturday and Sunday. And then the regular season, at least for the Road to Worlds regular season, is it an uphill battle or a downward spiral? Who can say? You know what, Trelly? Who can
You could say right now.
I could, or I could let you decide. You, the viewer
at home, get to decide when you watch Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, or I guess one Friday, just the one Friday, tomorrow at 11 a.m., and then Saturdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. for the next couple of weeks as we close out the Road to Worlds. For myself from Haddix, I almost called you Chaddix because that's the spam.
It fits.
Yeah, if it works, it works. Trelly, and of course, J-Mac, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you during the SPL.
Good morning and happy Friday, Smite fans, and welcome back to another week of the Smite Pro League. I'm J-Mac. I got Trelly joining me here on the desk as we get ready to kick off week number 6, the final full week of SPL, because then next week is only going to be a 2-day weekend for SPL, only going to be on Saturday and Sunday. But for this week, we still have today, Friday, and Sunday, a full 3 days, and we got some great sets over the course of these 3 days. We can take a look at the schedule. We'll have the Gladiators and the Leviathans to start things out today, and then the Ravens and the Hounds to follow shortly after. Then we kick off with our match of the week, Camelot King Sticks Ferryman on Saturday, Oni Warriors Jade Dragons, another amazing set you're going to want to watch out for after that. And then on Sunday, we'll start up with the Gladiators and the Hounds, and then close things out with the Ravens and the Leviathans on the end of Sunday. That will conclude week number 6. Important thing to note with all of these matches this week, Charlie, is that every single one is a cross-division match. You don't have any matchups this weekend. They're going to be playing within the same division. It's all against opponents on the opposite end, and then week 7 will be the last few matchups that are played within the division. Looking at the standings, it's up for grabs over on the Chaos side with the 5-2 and then 2-4-4 records immediately after. It's anyone's game for who might want to try and jump up into the top spot over on the Chaos side. For the Order, it's a little bit more complicated. There's still room for some of these teams to flex, but it pretty much requires these guys need to lose out, we need to win out situation for just about everybody to be able to jump a seed. So while not hard locked in at the moment in these positions, can almost safely assume, given the track records we've seen from the teams, that this will probably be where some of these squads end up locking out for the remainder of the phase for the Order side division. So still some great sets that we need to make sure to get through. And as you do see, the 2 and the 2 by the Ravens and the Kings, that is a true tie between those. Their head-to-head against each other is 3-3 game-wise. So that puts them at 1-1, and their plus-minus is also at the exact same. So we do have a dead-even tie between those teams.
Yep, standings, very important at this time of the year as well. So you got to make sure you're winning every crucial matchup, as you said. Counting on other teams to lose is also going to be a big part of it, but you can only really do your own job, right, which is make sure you get these crucial wins. So these next couple weeks, very important.
Yeah, making sure that you can get the highest standings possible to give yourself a better chance moving towards the Road to Worlds playoffs that's going to be happening just a few weeks after the actual phase completes. Top 3 from each of those divisions move forward into that one. The bottom 2 will unfortunately not be making their way to the playoffs. I believe they have to wait until the last chance qualifier much later on into, actually, I guess technically next year
yeah.
is when that one would kick off. So for the Gladiators, we won't be seeing them after the regular phase until that time. Let's see if the Eldritch Hounds will be the other team there, or if maybe they can somehow overtake the Jade Dragons. But again, that's going to take the Hounds winning out and the Dragons pretty much losing out for any kind of changes for that one to happen. But instead, we can kind of focus on the 2 teams here. Again, mentioning for the Gilded Gladiators, a team that, while they can't go up in their standings, I think for this team, trying to find a set win is a very important thing for them, trying to find game wins off some of these other top teams to really show that they still have what it takes right now, because this team has, in all honesty, they've been through the ringer this entire season, losing out their support and their solo lane coming into this phase, now having to make a role swap from their mid to their ADC after Stu got pulled into the Hounds team, and now bringing up Jangaru into the mid lane. But talking about Jangaru, it feels like he has been a breath of fresh air for this team in that mid role, a very consistent player and a very powerful player in that role as well.
Yeah, I would say so. The Gladiators needed a player like Jangaru to slot into that mid role. They needed someone that they could try and look to carry through, right? Try and play through. Kirmi was sort of going, between lanes, finding picks here and there, finding decent early pressure, but really did need a constant threat in the mid lane, and I do think that's what Jangaru brings to the table. With that, though, I'm going to highlight what you said. Just trying to find a win at this point is really what the Gladiators need to look for, and even if they can't, just some form of consistency when it comes to late game. That's all I'm looking for, because as I already said, Kirmi can find those early ganks. He can get some of these lanes ahead. It's just 20, 25 minutes. How many times have we seen them win a fight off of a defense, say, you know what, we can push it, we can go for the end off this, and then try and go for a Titan Siege and just get wiped? Those are the kind of plays that you only make when you really need a win. You could just take the small one and say, hey, we're going to go for the Phoenix back up, but it seems like the Gladiators, because they're so hungry for a win, because they just want to get a 1 in that column, are more willing to make those risky, not so worth it plays that can just throw your game off it.
It's almost one of those situations where now that they know that they really can't make it any further than where they are right now in standings, they're almost kind of the spoiler card at this point. If they can find a win against a team like the Leviathans wouldn't be able to jump up into that first place spot, I believe, at all, considering. So being able to find wins now, while still great for the team, also potentially a detriment for some of the other squads out there. Still a few games to be played between these teams, making sure that you can find a little bit of success. But I think more than anything, more than playing the spoiler, I think the important part, as you highlight, is to find improvements, especially towards their mid-late game. I mean, I go back to the matchup they had just had recently up against the Camelot Kings. They were doing great in the early game. They were fantastic. In fact, they had shut down Variety so hard, but then mid-game came around and late game came through, and Variety, who was down 1-6, out-farmed their 5-1 solo laner at that point. And so I think for the Gladiators, being able to kind of shore up that mid-game a bit, get to that late game, is really what we're looking for from this team. Up against them, though, is the Atlantis Leviathans, who have been a dominant force across the board. While maybe not the divisional leader right now, definitely have brought themselves up from what was a rough phase 1 for this team. Now bringing Panda Cat onto the team here in phase number 2 has made this really feel like a almost completely new team, and now sitting at your second seed in the Order division.
Yep, and because of that, we already talked about Jangaru. Shinto got to be that opposite side of the coin, who, unfortunately for him, has been on point, right? Shinto has just been electric for this squad ever since he got back in studio. Looks like one of the best mid laners in the world at the moment, just because his god pool is so diverse, as we've seen. He can still go towards some of those assassins despite not everyone seeing them. And even with that, still playing some of these mages to the top of the tier list, as you would expect.
Yeah, Shinto's been all over the board on his picks over the course of this phase. Even last year, he was having some crazy picks, and it's always fun getting to talk to Shinto, and luckily for us, we actually got a chance to sit down with Shinto earlier this week and talk to him about his thoughts on this matchup. Now with the Titans at a quarter HP, and the Leviathans can march right in. Final K, gonna try and get a kill on Benny, adapting, solos out Oath. The Leviathans can't get the last kill, but they can take the set.
A lot of good to say about the Leviathans. They owned all of it, except for the first 30 seconds.
Yeah, it was pretty... No, I'm not going to say easy game, but it was a pretty simple job. For sure, we play well and we're happy about it. Yeah, our team, we've been meshing together so well right now. We're still learning. We're playing really good, but we are still learning. And we yeah, we keep getting better and better. The Glads been looking kind of rough this phase, but they've been for a bunch of change, and now they change Snoopy in ADC and they change the mid. I think Jangaru is a really, really good joining the Glads. He's a really, really good player, really good ranked player, and yeah, I'm happy for him too. Versus Glad, we feel really confident. We feel confident. We feel that we can win the game, and yeah, we feel confident. Sure.
I think you got to have confidence going into just about any matchup here, and considering this is essentially your second seed overall across everybody at this point going up against the number 8 seed, I think it is important to still hold on to that confidence, but also to be still a bit wary of the competition. Don't underestimate what they're able to do, because when you have a team with nothing left to lose, they might pull out some wild cards, and if you're messing around a little bit, we've seen what happens to teams that try and play with their food a little too much against teams like the Gladiators, like the Valkyries of the past. They'll find a way to sneak a win on you, and it might just be able to give them the momentum to push a step forward.
And that's the thing. I think the Glads do have that ability, right? They have the ability to find one of those early leads, go with a sort of janky kind of composition that you're not expecting, you don't know how to play against, and then just snowball a matchup. They certainly do have that. It's just the Leviathans, you got to imagine they're ready for most things in that regard, right? They're not going to let just like a random pick sort of throw off their game plan.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the mid laners being. I can take a comparison of their god pool so far. Now, it looks a little small for Jangaru, but just remember he's only recently joined this team partway through the phase, so already having a few gods into his flex list. But when you look over at what Shinto's been doing, it's been outside of your traditional mages that have kind of popped in there. He's been playing a lot of non-mage. The Anubis is like the one that he's been kind of holding out comparatively to Jangaru there. Other than that, it's assassins and hunters, and I think that's given the Leviathans that extra edge over in the mid lane that it feels like they were kind of missing maybe in phase number 1, was being able to flex out of the traditional stuff, being able to find what's comfortable, and being able to really kind of adapt to these emergent style of metas that have really been popping up here. Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing Hunters mid, Assassins mid. We saw a little bit of Guardian and Warrior mid. Just about everything has been jumping over into the mid lane at some point. I think actually Guardian might be the only thing outside of Athena at one point during divisional kickoff. But I mean, this is a team who's been able to adapt to it well. I think Shinto has really stepped up his game. It felt like a bit of a quiet phase 1 from him. Now jumping in this Road to Worlds phase, he's really stepped up his game, and it's given the Leviathans that extra win con that they've been needing.
And that's what I'm talking about, right? You can see still going towards some of these Assassins when really no one else is. With the strength of breastplate, with the strength of these hybrid mage builds, Shinto can certainly do that, right? It's not like he can't play these mages, but it's still finding a way to make these high-pressure assassins work in this meta as well, which can be scary. There is a lot that Jangaru has that can deal with that, right? Like the Agnis, the Morgan Le Fays, good peel, good CC, which is kind of the nightmare of things like Set, things like Pele, if you can keep them off. But pressure is pressure, right? If you're going to come out swinging at level 2, you're going to clear waves first, you're going to go to mid camps, get pressure. You're probably hitting level 5 first. You can sort of look to gank the side lanes, which is what most junglers are doing right now, playing through either shield buff or cooldown buff. Left side of the map, right side of the map, you pick, and you're going to sit there on respawn every time. And then you just start siphoning farm from those lanes, and that can be just stemming from mid lane pressure. So Shinto and Jangaru, they've got a lot of control over this matchup.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where Jangaru rotates throughout this game. If he decides, if he gets to maybe an assassin style of play this time, if he decides to go over to the solo lane and help out Connor, if he maybe goes over into the duo lane to try and help out Snoopy and Awesome Jake a little bit over there. So I'm curious to see the play style of these two mid laners now against each other. The only time this phase that they'll play up against each other, because it is that cross-divisional style of matchup for every single match this weekend. So I think it's important for Leviathans to find their win here, but also important for the Gladiators to see if they can get a win. And if not a win, at the very least, making sure that they can find some form of improvement. And I think one thing that I should also mention here, we talked a little bit about the Morrigan. Do have word that Morrigan will be competitively banned for this weekend right now due to a bug. So not going to see the Morrigan. So we're going to have to see what new at least kind of comes out of Jangaru. We haven't really seen Shinto go towards the pick just yet. The Morrigan has been a great pick for Jangaru. So seeing that one won't be available to him, it is going to be something that now we need to see where else he adapts to. I've been seeing the Baba Yaga. The Raijins look very good for him. That Morrigan feels like it's been kind of his third big pick so far.
Yep, and the other thing is, Raijin hasn't been getting through too much, right? That has been a very popular ban. Of course, Baba Yaga in that conversation as well. And we're talking a lot about mages, which sure, goes towards the mid lane, of course, but that also brings into the solo lane conversation as well, right? It's not like you can get away with talking about mages and not mention the fact that that is the majority of play in the solo lane at the moment as well. We just got a big conversation with Haddix on Waiting Room just before this set came through about how, you know, the things like the Raijin, the Morgan Le Fay, the Alpwash, the Anubis, all of which are still played in the solo lane as well. And we know that FinalK loves to go towards those gods. Kana, a little bit more stuck in his ways, still does play some of those assassins, has played a bit of the Hades, but hasn't quite, you know, dove into the full dive of all these different mages being played in the solo lane. I expect, though, today would be the day to bring it out, right? You've been talking about how playing spoiler, just trying to get a win under your belt. If you're going to try out things like, you know, the Anubis, the Morgan Le Fay, the Alpwash, this would be the time to do so. So I don't know if I expect to see it, but I would like to see kind of look towards some of those picks as well, because you know FinalK is going to go towards them if he's get the opportunity to. If they're not banned away, he's going to try and snap block those gods.
I think that's an important point to bring up, is that it really feels like the Gladiators and Kana specifically not necessarily has been behind the meta, but just hasn't been going to what's been meta so far. In week number 5 at the very least, the mages kind of took over. We saw a little over half of the games that were played were mage picks over into the solo lane, and we only saw 3 warriors over the course of that entire week, at least as far as, you know, uniqueness in the warriors. We saw Amaterasu, we saw Sun Wukong, and Hercules. Those are the only 3 warriors that were being picked in solo lane last week. We saw double that in the mage category. Poseidon, Anubis popping over, Morgan Le Fay, Alpwash, Raijin, all those kinds of picks. Hades can even pop in there. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw kind of go towards the Hades. It's kind of always been a staple mage over in the solo lane, so maybe it's surprising that there isn't a little bit of extra priority thrown that way. But I think it is important for Kana in the solo lane to be able to adapt to and play into the new kind of emergent meta that has popped in there. Because with the new patch kind of dropping through, this meta is here to stay for at least the remainder of this phase. So now's the best time to kind of get that practice in, kind of utilize it a bit, because, I mean, by the time the next guys play, there might be an entirely new meta at that point.
I mean, that's the issue, right? You got to make sure you're adapting quickly as well, right? It's not like you can just sit here till the end of the phase and say, oh, now I understand that I have to play some of these gods. I have to try and, you know, deal with this pressure. It needs to happen as soon as possible. The teams that adapt quickly are the ones that are on the top of the standings. So, yeah, I tend to agree. I want to see Kana look towards some of those picks as well. And if Kana does go to some of those picks, hear me, gotta pick a lane as well. Are you looking towards Awesome Drake and Snoopy? Do they have the pressure? Or do you sit there with Kana and try and help him out? Because more often than not, Kimmy looks towards Kana maybe once a game, figures out if the gank's gonna work, and then gives up on that lane if it doesn't.
We do jump into the picks and bans for game number 1 between the Leviathans and the Gladiators, to see if the Gladiators can find some success against the Leviathans, if the Leviathans maybe bring something a little bit more fun out during some of their matches. We've been seeing a lot of teams that do go up 2-0, do kind of mess around a little bit, try some new things, try some unique stuff. Though here in game 1, expect a lot of the norm to kind of be what falls into place, and the Leviathans are doing just that with their bans. Same with the Gladiators. It'll be Baba Yaga and Amaterasu as bans for the Leviathans. Opposite side, for the Gladiators, they do take away the Yamoja and the Alpwash. So the Raijin's still notably available. Same with the Chernobog if we're looking over at least for carries. I'm curious to see what the Leviathans will go with their next ban here, see what they'll leave open for the Gilded Gladiators and try and keep open for themselves, as we do see Ratatoskr as the next ban.
Looking towards a lot of those mages at the moment. Chernobog, Raijin still available. Leviathans, they have the ability to look towards those very early here, and yep, the Gilded Gladiators, I was going to say, they have to decide, do they want to take them away or just try and get one or the other? I would think the Chernobog is more prevalent, and that is the case. The Leviathans grab that one, which means the Gladiators do get their hands on the Raijin. We talked about it a bit ago. Jangaru, a god that he likes to go to a lot, looks very clean on it, but recently has been going more towards the solo lane. So I'm going to hold on to that flex potential, not necessarily locking in for mid just yet. And they grab the Athena as well. Not a bad top 2 there for the Gilded Gladiators, especially if they're using that Athena global presence immediately at level 5. You get a lead just about any lane you want if you're using that correctly. Leviathans, man, they're trying to lock in some more pressure behind this Chernobog, and that's going to be scary.
Soul along with the Chernobyl, a double hunter style of play. We've been seeing Panda Cat go towards this pick quite a bit. The player who hasn't really gone towards their selection now, maybe we'll hold and see where this Charon's going, if it's going over for Finake or for Wrong Yu, because we haven't really seen Wrong Yu go towards this god very much so far this phase, if really even at all. We've seen Finake go towards it once, and then we have seen, actually never mind, Wrong Yu's gone towards it 3 times this phase, my mistake. But has only found 1 game of success on it at this point between the 2 players on that team. So this hasn't been a very successful pick for the Leviathans, but maybe given maybe a Charon Soul combo of a dual lane, you can get a lot of pressure over there. Maybe try and force Kirmi's hand on the opposite side over that direction. Speaking of Kirmi, still no pick for him just yet. They go with an Ishtar on the side of the Gilded Gladiators, which means that Leviathans now have the pick of the field to try and ban away Kirmi, who has kind of been that pivot point for the Gladiators. Wherever Kirmi goes is usually where he tries to get the pressure for the team, so trying to keep him down as much as possible seems to be the game plan for the Leviathans.
Not a bad strat as well. If you're trying to stop the early pressure of the Gilded Gladiators, you're trying to just limit what they can do. Looking towards Kirmi is not a bad look. You're along Shen. A little bit of early pressure as well. Trying to just make sure that Kirmi can't get off to a running start. But with Soul, with Chernobyl, you already have such a tremendous late game. It's not like the Leviathans had that early pressure either. I mean, Soul can come out swinging, right? Level 2, Bastion pressure, insane. You get a little bit of a pressure Guardian in that lane, and Soul is going to make sure that you are clearing just about as quickly as anyone else, and the boxing presence as well. It's just super annoying to try and deal with, just how much that full heat Soul auto attack can do. But with that, to your point, Charon, not really revealed if it's going over towards support or just going back to Finake in the solo lane. I imagine would have a decent matchup into the Raijin if it goes there, just because you can silence out Percussive Storm on cooldown. The issue, of course, is that Guardians don't really have that much built-in CDR. They have to really build towards it, whereas Raijin, I mean, he can cast just about every 4 seconds or so with Genji's proc, so it can be very annoying with that Bountiful Bow as well, to try and keep up with the amount of damage. That's the reason some of these mages are so prevalent. But we already highlighted it. Not even sure if that goes over towards solo lane, because Jengaru likes it a lot.
Ooh.
The E-Shell comes in, and that could be mid or solo as well.
Especially with kind of the now solidified solo lane style of build. Go Vampiric Shroud, get the Pythags, double defense, usually Breastplate Genji is kind of the option, and a Typhons to round things out, and then you can kind of do whatever you want with that 6th item. Heavy Sustain has really been the name of the game, and high cooldowns over in the solo lane. So some options with both the Raijin and the E-Shell in that regard. We'll keep our eyes peeled on where that pick may be going, as Thor gets locked in for Leviathans, and now a Chang'e being hovered as well. A couple of picks that have been discussed as to, at least for Chang'e and E-Shell, now with kind of the rise of the mage solos, have been wondering what other mages we might potentially be able to see over there. This Chang'e gets locked in. A lot of sustain comes the way of the side of Leviathans, which would push this Charon to be over towards the dual lane alongside this Soul. Between the Raijin and the E-Shell, I mean, E-Shell did just get a buff. I believe her enhanced auto from her passive, a bit more range to it now, and her ultimate giving her damage mitigation. Do you think that this fits her now more towards that soul lane style of play, or do you think that she still has that home in mid?
Yeah, I think the mitigation while channeling Great End is the big difference maker for me. The passive is so-so. The auto attack helps with clear. It's good damage, but you know, being able to survive when casting that ultimate is the big deal. So if I had a choice, I think I would prefer Raijin to be tankier, but they both have tremendous clear, good pressure, good sustain when you build into that lifesteal build. It could be either or. When you're looking towards who wants to deal with Chang'e more, that's also questionable, man. I mean, they just have high pressure mages. They both can fulfill the role so well. It's just, if you want more survivability, Raijin can dash in more, he can create more space, so I'm still leaning towards putting Raijin over in the solo lane, but with the buffs that we highlighted, I think they both have pretty equal value over in that lane as opposed to just building full damage. It could go either way. Looking towards the Leviathans, though, that Chang'e pick, good CC, you already have great setup with Anvil of Dawn, followed out the River of Styx, and you've got 2 ADCs in the backline. It can be a real nasty late game if they're able to get to that point, if they don't just get rolled over, and so far, we haven't seen Kirmi's pick yet, I assume. So we don't know if the Gilded Gladiators are going to have that tremendous early pressure. There are still a lot of pressure junglers available. But none that scream Kirimi to me. He's gone to the Hunbats a bit. The Kamisatsu is banned away. Yearling Shen also banned away. Yep, the Hunbats is going to be the call. And that's still a pick that wants to wait a little bit, right? You're not coming out of the gate swinging. You want that ultimate. You need Fear No Evil to get aggressive. So yeah, when you're not bringing the pressure to the double Hunter lane, late game can get you real scary here for the Glads.
So Hunbats for Kirimi. A great look for him. Just honestly a nice pick in general. I've been loving what we've been seeing out of the Hunbats in recent weeks, and if I'm not mistaken, also did get a little bit of a buff coming into this patch as well to try and help him out. A little bit of extra base MP5 and MP5 scaling over the course, so he'll have his mana back a little bit easier over the course of the game, but that's not the biggest one there. Somersault getting cooldown reduction, now not 15 scaling to 11, it's 13 seconds at rank 1 now, scaling still to that 11 late game, so it doesn't change his late game on that. But it's that Fear No Evil, that big damage buff that it got for the first one. Couple of ticks that hit you in the early game was hitting for 30 before and then scaled up to 50. Now at every single rank, that ultimate is hitting you for 50. I believe someone said if you get it by, it's the full duration of at least rank 1. It's like an 80 damage increase that you're getting from this ability. Massive buff for this god.
And that's the thing. When Hunbat's ult was beadsed, you didn't get too much value. Now, at the very least, if you put it on the middle of them, even if they beat, they're taking some extra tick damage, right? That does help out with Hunbats' kit, and more specifically, that MP5. You don't have to build into Transcendence now. You can still get Eye of the Jungle. You can go into just, mace items, and with that extra MP5, you're not running out of mana. You can stick around in the jungle just a little bit longer, get those items online, and that means you can get full Jotuns before your first ultimate, get that extra CDR, and it just helps the snowball so much more. Hunbats was in not the best spot. Always going to be that ult bot where, you're playing around level 5, you're playing around that ultimate, but being able to farm a little bit more effectively, trade a little bit more effectively, and now have the extra damage and cooldown on Somersault, I think he's in a much better spot. Still though, not the early pressure I was talking about. Not enough to really thwart what the Leviathans are trying to do, which is get Soul, get Chernobog to level 20, and then just try and just overwhelm you with damage.
I kind of wonder now what we'll see maybe Kirimi kind of go towards on this team, because I look over at potentially what's going to be here a Chang'e solo. I look at Chang'e solo, I'm like, okay, as long as that 2 is up, and Final K has decently quick reaction time, Fear No Evil probably not going to get a ton of value over there. So instead, now I maybe look over at the duo lane. Soul, not the easiest character to gank, not the hardest one, and then maybe it's a pick on a Charon. If you're Kirimi piling this Hunbats, which of these lanes, is it a side lane or is it mid lane you put some more emphasis towards?
Yeah, I'm still looking towards solo, just because, there is a bit of a vulnerability there, but you can force it out, and there's plenty of damage. That's sort of the benefit of mage solos as well. You get killed quickly, but you can, force damage. You can just all in very well. And if it's a 2v1, there's not much Chang'e has to sort of survive. She can juke around. She can use Waxing Moon. She's got a small bit of sustain. But you got to be warding up and sitting underneath the tower if you don't know where Fear No Evil is coming from. That dance is not enough CC immunity to immune all of Fear No Evil. It's going to get you out of some trouble, but the damage is going to be the main issue. So if I'm Kirimi, I'm definitely sitting at least the first blue buff spawn, or I guess the respawn of that buff. If you steal that, I'm there the rest of the game. If you don't, maybe you try your luck over towards duo.
And let's see if the Gladiators can find some pressure for themselves. The early game has been good for them. It's getting beyond this early game. Once you start hitting these level 12s, relics come online. That's where we've been seeing some of the struggle, some of the slowdown from the Gilded Gladiators. So I think being able to step on the gas early, keep your foot on that gas pedal. I'd say even if things are going wrong, just keep trying to make stuff work. You've got Hunbats. As long as Hunbats is alive and has an ultimate, I'd say you've got a pretty solid team fight. And then you also can't discount the credit that there is an Athena on that team. That is one of the easiest combos of beads burn potential that you could ask for Awesome Jake to have for this team. Dash, taunt, you're going to grab beads from just about anybody who's standing in front of you.
Yep, and you can ult across the map. You say, hey, Kirimi, we're ganking someone. Let's go. Well, I'm on the way. I'll fly in and get the taunt for you, pull the beads, Fear No Evil after, or the immunity's down, the escape is down. I can chase down with Defender of Olympus. So there is just a lot for the Gilded Gladiators comp that's going to work when it goes into that late game, but you can't discredit the fact that the double ADC is going to be very scary, and the Leviathans still do have that double mage core. Not as much CC, Soul is pretty much there for damage and burn. The Supernova provides a little bit of a knock-up in that regard, but you're more so looking for extra damage at that point.
Well, we do have a player trying to reconnect at the moment. That's what our delay is going on with right now. We're still trying to get them into the game at the moment. Should only be a couple more minutes before we're able to jump into there. So looking at this Leviathans comp again, you highlight the double hunter that kind of pops through. We know that teams have been going towards these Gold Furies a little bit sooner. We've been seeing more often as of recent 7, 8, 9-minute style of Gold Fury. You have Chernobog, you have Soul. Crit probably not going to be online immediately for the Chernobog, but it feels like once the Telkine's ring comes online for Soul, it gives you a whole lot of boxing potential, but also gives you a lot of threat around the objectives. So how important for the Gilded Gladiators looking at a double hunter comp is it to have maybe some of that earlier ward pressure than you would maybe normally see?
I mean, it's a big deal, but even with the ward coverage, you gotta think about burst as well. What on the Gilded Gladiators is gonna outburst like Stellar Burst into Supernova? Not much. I mean, in fact, nothing. It's just so much burst damage coming from the Soul. So getting there first is a big deal. Getting there late, it's essentially a weighted coin in favor of the Atlantis Leviathan. So you're really counting on Kirmi to get involved. That CC trying to just get towards Soul and say, hey, I have CC'd you. You can't use your abilities when you want to. Fear no evil is a great steal toll. Not the one that's going to be actually getting the objective, but pushing everyone away so that your damage can come through. That's also going to be a big deal. So I'm looking towards, paying attention to this Thor. Where is adapting going to be? Does he have, eyes on the sky? Can he zone towards this Gold Fury? That's also going to be a big deal when it comes to these, Gold Fury fights and things towards Fire Giant as well.
Yeah, objective has really been kind of the name of the game for the Leviathans, always making sure that they can try and get to those as quickly as possible, try and control as much as they can. So I think it's important for the Gladiators to be able to answer back to what the Leviathans have been capable of. And again, really emphasizing that the early game of the Gladiators has been good, and we really need to see a bit more of it. I think the step up for Kana in this game, I think this is a big matchup for him. Now starting to see him adapt to the made solo style of meta. Sure, he's played a little bit of Hades in the past. I think we've seen a little bit of Baron, not necessarily from him, but from him at least during those kinds of metas when we saw that. So we know that he has the capability to play these mages. Now you get to see kind of how he can face off against maybe a new mage over into the solo, because we haven't seen Chunga in quite some time. I know that I believe his Aquarius was bringing her out a little bit last year during his time playing in the SPL, so haven't really seen much of that god since then. So seeing how it can work out for the Leviathans and how the Gilded Gladiators can perform, we are ready to jump into game number 1 between the Levis and the Glads, and we'll throw it over to Frog and Mifflin.
Thank you so much, J-Mac and Trelly on the desk. You've got Frog, you've got Mifflin, and you've got the Levi's versus the Gladiators up on your screen. It is still for the Gladiators, I think, trying to find their footing with this new mid laner. Jengaru certainly brought a new look to this team, but I mean, this is a tough opponent to do it against. The Levi's have looked at the top of their field for most of this season, and the poll definitely aligns with that. 85% for the Leviathans to take this first game, and I'm looking at the comps as well. I think they might, just be favored in the early in the team fights as well.
Early and the team fights for the Leviathans?
I
you like everything about their draft.
I do like everything about the draft. I'm a Chernobog fan.
Okay.
As well, I think I just, I like in the mid lane. Shinto's been playing this god a lot. It's looked good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've both got very strong compositions. I'm a big fan of Athena on the other side. I think the desk does a great job highlighting the strengths of the Gilded Gladiators composition and how they play, especially around those objective-based team fights. I think Kirmi and Jake going to have a lot of heavy lifting to do here. They've also got the Raijin. I don't know. I'm not exactly down on the Gilded Gladiators just yet. And as you said, playing with Jengaru, I think, has really revitalized this team.
Yep.
Whether or not they're going to be able to line up against the Leviathans, TBD. Leviathans looking like at least a top 3 team as of now. But that's not to say the Gilded Gladiators can't do it. It's not a great start, though.
Bit of an interesting pop from the Frenzy there for Jake. Thought he might have gone for the steal. Looks like they took down the buff just as soon as he was questioning it. I mean, I think one of the reasons maybe I give that initial opinion, as much as, hold that thought, adapting under a little bit of pressure. Actually, a lot more action here in the mid lane than we thought. And that's where I was going to bring us over towards this Ixchel in the mid lane. Not a pick that I've seen, we haven't seen it a lot, of course, but not one that I've seen have a ton of success, or that I'm very high on, I suppose.
Yeah, but some of the most recent buffs to Ixchel, I think, really have enhanced her viability. Better poke, better survivability. Always has that great utility of healing, as well as just a constant blind. It feels like one of the most poke-heavy gods in the game. Leap in for Kirmi, that is ill-advised. Does a little bit of damage, but takes more from adapting on return. Hunbot's not exactly great until level 5. At level 5, though, probably strongest on map.
Yeah, I saw when it got picked up, I was looking at the stats, and I think this god's been picked 9 total times, only won 3 times. So 33% win rate, not standing fantastic, but
That's just like Bobby's SPL for you.
you heard it on the desk though. The recent buffs to Bobby as well. He became a caster, of course, but I mean recent buffs to Hun Bats. He gets a little bit more damage on that ultimate, some CD reductions. I mean, do you expect Kirmi to try and get involved a little bit earlier, some more confidence on this pick now?
I mean, at least at level 5, you were doing more damage. Confidence comes from Somersault being a little bit lower on that cooldown, but considering Jengaru has been restricted to tower line for the first 2 minutes of this game, might be difficult to leverage any bit of early aggression. Kana, though, clearly not having those same struggles. Final K, a little bit away from the standard on the Chang'e, whereas Raijin has been absolutely dominating the Soul Lane. I'm curious to see how well Final K lines up. I'm not concerned for his life. Chang'e very survivable, but I am concerned for Final K's ability to keep waves out of his tower or defend his blue buff. If Kirmi can start his rotations over soon, seems to be the case. Could be looking at a small skirmish there.
Dash in from Kana. Damage onto Adapting, down to half HP already. And that gives Kirmi the space. He's on to the blue buff. Final K looking to secure it if he can, but it's dangerous. He stepped up a little bit farther than he anticipated, perhaps, but the level 5 thought it might have the turnaround, and they do. Shinto, he's at level 5 as well, and the Leviathans on the board for first blood.
You gotta steal away that blue. If the Guild of Gladiators confirm that one, Final K is not 5. There's no damage return from that Chang'e ultimate, and maybe you can keep the fight up or at least make it out of there alive. But Guild of Gladiators flub the invade. Leviathans take advantage, and Shinto gets involved from the center of the map. And you have to expect that every single time you take a fight where Shinto isn't, he'll be there, and he'll be there quickly.
Yeah, he can start to get involved as soon as he hits that level 5, as you see right there. I mean, it must have been, a couple of seconds before that he had ticked over to get that ultimate in mid lane. And especially with the amount of pressure that he's been putting Jengaru under thus far. If Ixchel is just trapped behind that tower, you get to rotate if you're Shinto, and you don't even lose much farm for it because you're pushing waves under the enemy tower.
That is right. Look at that build from Shinto, too. Aussie in first slot. Good deal of sustain. Should be able to hang out in lane for just about ever. And that makes sense to me as an adaptation up against Ixchel. Her ability to poke is incredibly high and has only gotten better here in 10-11. Now having additional range and the enhanced auto attack means that Shinto doesn't exactly have a safe spot to sit without taking a little bit of poke. So I think Aussie, a smart way to stay topped off in the lane. Has hit 5, could at least get beads here.
Potentially looking for some damage, but won't drop the ultimate, just gets the dash out of Shinto and helps him find a little bit of safety. Meanwhile, Kirmi taking a little bit of this farm as Jengaru returns to base, but the ultimate comes through and Kirmi does not get a chance to react. No beads available for the Hun Bats, and Adapting takes advantage.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. You really got to see Hunbots be willing to just throw out the ultimate, I think. Even just stripping away beads from Shinto there, if it's a low percentage odds kill, and it is. Jengaru didn't exactly have a whole lot left in the tank to fight there, which is why he's sent back to base. At least you prevent Shinto from jumping into someone's shadow in the soul lane or the duo lane and having beads afterward, right? You want to get rid of those resources, burn through it, rotate through, maybe get the kill a little bit later on. That trepidation costs Kirmi a lot there, and Adapting, of course, has his opportunities every single time. I mean, even looking at relic selection across the board for the Leviathans, it's a whole lot of beads and one bracer. So it's not even as if Kirmi's got an easy target. He's going to have to burn beads wherever he goes.
Yeah, that bead's just now forced onto Adapting, though. Not sure what took that. Maybe the ultimate from Kana that's now down. So missed a little bit of that engagement. And I think they were looking for the invade, but just because that blue timer's a little bit delayed, they're not able to push up and find that aggression. Now that that beads timer is down from Adapting, though, that's got to be a focal point if Kirmi wants to get involved early. And given that he went for this blink first and not the beads first, I want to be seeing him use it in the first 10 or so minutes here.
Yeah, needs to get aggressive. Otherwise, that safety would have just been better. Makes some sense, too. Certainly some potential to get involved on map, knowing the Leviathans will be playing with pressure, especially over here in the duo lane. The desk highlights it pretty well. Soul, maybe not the easiest to gank, but certainly puts herself in a position to be ganked consistently. Panda Cat living up to that now on that tier 1 tower line. Kirami's going to spend the next little while just farming up on map. Don't believe we'll see him get overly active in the next few minutes. Adapting, nursing about a half-level lead. Likely going to be the progenitor of aggression, but Adapting is also one of the most patient junglers in the league. Loves making sure he has all of his resources available. So 7 or so seconds till those beads are back up.
Damage onto Shinto. And the mid 2v2 back in line here between these two. So far, the only aggression we've seen has been towards that soul lane, outside of that one gank from Adapting, which sort of happens, you know, all in an instant. But all the planning has come from this right lane, and I think it has a lot to do with these mage solos. We've seen a lot of different reactions to these, right? We've seen an Opwash over there be completely camped and shut down. We've seen Origin be totally camped and shut down. But now it's almost like people have gotten used to the mage solos enough that, like, even if I camp them, they're still going to be monsters late game. So, like, what's the point?
Well, it's to prevent the late game from coming quickly or picking up some early kills. There's a lot of reasons you would gank the mage solos. I think it's more so to do with the fact that Chang'e is incredibly safe and the mage solos maybe not as squishy as you might expect just because of the amount of sustain they have in build. Pythag's piece, pretty difficult to deal with. Still need to burn through their beads. Both have some form of CC immunity and kit. So it's not as if Adapting or Kirami have an easy time rotating over that lane, but I don't think it's a blanket statement. Don't gank mage solos.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. What do you think makes a mage solo at this point? Because, I mean, we saw Raijin, they pulled him out. I think it was the Levi's who pulled him out initially when nobody expected him to. And then Chang'e, of course, you know, been a focal point. Won't even get a chance to finish the question because they're looking for a little bit of a purple invade. The Leviathans grouped up here aggressively on the left-hand side, and Kirami and Awesome Jake grouped around as well. Watch for the rotation. Jangaru in the area, and of course Shinto could join at any moment. It looks like they won't want the fight, they just want the purple invade. They'll get it, but they'll be trapped in between 4 members here. A well-timed Fear No Evil, and Panda Cat falls down. Adapting in on the ultimate, and Rongyu, he's low. The taunt is good for a second kill, but a great double tap. Masters one back, and Kirami will fall. Now a 3 versus 2, and the pressure is continuing to be answered back, but Adapting just makes the difference. A 3 for 2 overall, and Shinto, he's still fighting, but he's got to run.
Snoopy's on the chase, Dash is there, closes gap, but Shinto makes it back and safe towards that tower. Not sure I agree with Adapting going for the reinitiation there. Even knocking down Jang, that's a double goose egg, as opposed to the pretty large bounty that Adapting's going to be worth at that point. So, Gilded Gladiators off their own aggression. Great rotation from Jangaru. Snoopy getting involved, good ultimate to slow things down. Kirami, of course, separates the entire fight with Fear No Evil. Turns things around a bit. All that to say, Leviathans still do confirm their own purple buff. Still do get a few invades, pick up some neutral farm. Still do push their gold lead. But still, a good idea of what team fights are going to begin to look like as the 5-on-5 begins to develop. Gilded Gladiators, it's a great composition so long as they're all on top of each other, but they're still bumping heads into maybe the strengths of the Leviathans. Shinto showing up after everything is already used makes it pretty difficult.
Quick pause here as we figure out some things on the end of the players, but I mean, you're right, that gives us a little bit of a view into how these team fights are going to look, and specifically I'm looking at the pairing of when you have Athena next to Hunbats, right? Obviously, we think about that in the large-scale team fights, but early on, for the first 10, 15 minutes maybe, you don't have them next to each other, so you're not, like, bouncing off of each other's beads necessarily, right? It's all on Kirami, it's all on Hunbats to drop that ultimate and try and keep track of those timers himself. But once you get Jake in the mix, once you get this rotation out of dual lane, starts a little bit more reliable confirmation of challenging those beads timers.
And the joy of Athena is that you can get out of the duo lane at the press of a button, and you can get anywhere on the map at that exact same press of a button. So solo lane ganks maybe a little bit easier if Jake decides to start getting involved on that side of the map. And as you said, in the team fight, things get easier as well. You do generally want to burn beads with Athena taunt. It's just a much shorter cooldown. So once that becomes the case, things simplify a bit.
Going back into game here. Apologies once again for the pause, but I think the Leviathans not reeling necessarily after that fight. I mean, obviously, I think the Gladiators come out on top in a little bit of a trade, but it's not really showing in the gold lead. Still 2,000 for the Leviathans, and the experience definitely in their favor as well. I think they've got about a 1-level lead in pretty much all of the roles here. 1 level to a half a level across that mid 2v2 specifically. And I think that gives them a little bit more confidence to bring this pressure and start fights just like they did. But, I mean, even then, we've seen the Leviathans be a later game team at times. And, I mean, I think they're just happy to sort of play around for those team fights, or at least mid-game fights.
Or wait on some pretty significant power spikes. I'm keeping my eyes from Typhon's Fang, from Panic Cat, getting that penetration available, as well as the lifesteal. Could open the potential for a Gold Fury. Double Hunter composition for the Leviathans means that Gold Fury should be a target relatively soon. Could burn through it very fast, especially considering Shinto's got Fail Not in that second slot. Anytime you see crit on a Hunter, all of a sudden those neutral objectives start to be a bit more enticing.
Wow. Shinto taking a ton of poke there just in a couple ability trades. Jengaru, though, will be locked off with a wall. And a small grouping here maybe gives the Gladiators the pressure that they were looking for. This left side of the map all of a sudden has become a focus. And it's as soon as the Leviathans go for that purple buff invade, and we saw, you know, the little skirmish there in mid. And I wonder if these teams are starting to think about this beacon, starting to think about this Gold Fury as well on the left-hand side. Adapting up into the air, as is Shinto. The pressure's on to Kirmi. Still no beads available, and the burst is perfect. They do find the trade onto adapting, though, so it's 1-for-1.
A phenomenal trade again for the Gilded Gladiators. Might get even better. Shinto sticks around. Auto attack, no good. And Shinto gets out of a sticky situation. Jang just a little bit too late to finish off that kill, but does at least burn those beads. Does at least get rid of adapting too. So great trade for the Gilded Gladiators. Kirmi is just worth less. Bounty-wise, farm on map-wise as well, taking out the lead. So significant. But it does speak to the confidence of the Leviathans that adapting said, yo, 3v2 on my tower line, Shinto's in the air at a quarter HP. Yeah, we win these fights. It's not going to be an issue. And nearly does so. Nearly has the damage to just deal with Kirmi before he drops Fear No Evil. And if that's the case, the entire fight goes to the Leviathans. So thin margins, but small wins for the Gilded Gladiators.
Beacon being contested here by both squads, but it's only Awesome Jake here for the Gladiators. I think he will have to back off and give this one over as Shinto shows up to help out. Beacon has not been as much of a contention point ever since the changes quite a bit ago. And I think, you know, teams may have used it as a fight point in the past, but now it's much more heavily around these neutral objectives, especially the Gold Fury.
Yeah, and it's at such a tumultuous time, such a volatile time in the game when that first beacon spawns up that if you don't feel like you're completely confident in your ability to take the fight around it, it's really not worth making that rotation. Second beacon, third beacon, a little bit easier to make those rotations on, but you're still waiting on some significant power spikes, a few people looking for that second relic, so it might slow down that fight. Worth noting though, Awesome Jake has really soaked up a lot of farm so far this game, seen a lot of splits in mid, 3 splits in mid, 3 splits on camps, and it's put him in a pretty good position. Jake's feeling pretty strong right now, but it has come at a cost of his carries. Both Jengaru and Kirmi now on a half level down, Jake sitting about a level up.
Dashton attempted there. I think he wants it. He's looking to get aggressive, adapting into the sky and forced down at about 60%. We'll see if the chase continues, but the Gilded Gladiators will be hard-pressed to find a little bit more after using that Fear No Evil. A lot of their engage maybe takes a back seat. Good dash taunt will force it to separate, but this rotation, that's what I've got my eyes on. Kana rotating over from the soul lane. That might empower them to pick up the Fury.
Shinto's posted up on the right-hand side, though. Pyromancer pulled out. If Rongu could slow this down, Shinto could get involved after the objective.
Frenzy gets popped. Gold Fury looking to be secured, but the Levi's, they take it away with the Soul Ultimate. Yikes. And at the same time, they get Pyromancer. So the Levi's, they don't have to make the trade. They get the best of both worlds.
I mean, that's +1 gifted by the Gilded Gladiators there. Just confirmation wasn't quite available. Leviathan to sneak it away. Great ultimate timing from Rongu to disrupt the Gilded Gladiators secure. I believe that's probably the cause of it. Panic Cat, of course, times his ultimate well too. But had there been just a little bit more ability damage from the Glads, had there not been a massive taunt just a second before, maybe that objective at least trades in their favor. And now it's the Leviathans with every bit of control on the map, and the Gilded Gladiators got to be thinking to themselves, we can't even take a team fight and find a massive win now. Both Pyro and Gold are off the map at the exact same time, so later on maybe the trade becomes available, but until then it's just slow things down, try and control your own camps, farm up, grab neutrals where you can, but not exactly favoring any of those neutral territory fights, considering the Gilded Gladiators playing into this massive deficit. Levi's, I mean, that is a back-breaking play at the 15-minute mark.
And that really explodes the lead for them as well, up to about 6K here in the Gold Fury, maybe closer to 5, or in the Gold lead, rather. Experience lead still favoring them, but now it's 2 levels in mid, 2 levels in jungle, 2 levels in solo as well. And all the time, I mean, that rotation for Kana is huge as well, because they don't get anything for it. He walks all the way across the map, he misses a couple of waves. Adapting. Under the pressure, though, trying to steal away the green buff, and what?
That's illegal.
He steals the green buff, and he gets out alive. That's illegal.
Yeah, not only does he steal the green buff, but it's an active decision of, I'm going to survive, uses the Bumbless Dagger healing. I think that is the difference maker, but it does remove him from the map. Kirmi now involved, burns through some realms.
The re-engage, though, is Shinto. He ults in and finds the 1v3 and finds Snoopy within the chaos. A killing spree for the mid laner. And Awesome Jake being locked down as well. A double for Shinto as they turn the fight around. An attempted gank from the Gladiators does not go their way.
And that's why you don't give up Chernobog. Every single time you take a fight where he isn't, he is. Shinto does it once more. I mean, that's maybe the 4th exchange this game we've seen Kirmi initiate with Fear No Evil. Shinto, his ears perk up from across the map. Oh, Fear No Evil's down? I'm under 0 threat. Ults in and just makes things so easy. Kana potentially in some trouble here. If he takes too much damage, if he's poked out, Fire Giant could just be the target. Fortunately for Kana, still healthy, but the Leviathans are setting a wild pace.
Yeah, they are looking for the biggest objective on the map. Fire Giant down to about half HP, and Kana certainly aware of this one, but the Gladiators, if they want to make it in, they have to do it soon. Down to 20%, the dash in from Awesome Jake, and the Levi's secure the objective. They're even looking for the fight afterwards. Awesome Jake, the CC needs to come through the slow. The root is there, and the Athena falls down. The Leviathans get Fire Giant and a pick at 17 minutes.
Plenty of gold on map to collect. Start with the tier 1 tower. Levi's, it's a great defense from Fine Stiff arms Kana at the blue buff, says, hey, stay back, buddy. And Kana does. Fire Giant goes down, and Levi's now on a warpath, can do essentially no wrong on map. If your eyes on left, Shinto's ulted in. Kirmi on retreat, but lands into the other global. Adapting, knocks him down, and here's the thing, another global as well. If you made it another 5 steps, the wave would have got you.
That's brutal. I mean, you know, Kirmi just trying to farm over there on the left-hand side, and it's, you know, at risk of falling down 3 levels behind. He's 4 levels down to the enemy mid laner, who's the one that's ulting to where he is every time he appears on a minion wave, it seems like at this point. And the Leviathans, they can do no wrong. We're right 18 minutes in, and you've got a 10K gold lead, just period, plus the Fire Giant, which we could maybe equate to somewhere around a 5 or 10K gold lead. This is I mean, this feels like a 99%er, one that the Levi's would have to lose.
Yeah, Levi's in a pretty good position from here. Good siege composition. Shinto and Panicat can split the map relatively well, have Shinto play on opposite side, leverage that global, and you're not exactly sacrificing structure damage. The only thing I could see costing the Leviathans on siege is maybe the difficulty with which they initiate fights. Final Kick can do it from range with ultimate, but that's an ultimate cooldown. Wrong Yu, I mean, if he's starting things off, could be his ultimate, but again, ultimate cooldown. Where he has to just walk himself in point blank, connect some of those roots, maybe some of those silences. So if the Gilded Gladiators just play safe, play in their tier 2, play back, play the poke battle, could slow down the Leviathans. All that to say though, I mean, 11,000 gold separating them. You don't exactly need to have an easy time. You can just tank up a lot of abilities. You're allowed a certain margin for errors when you're this far ahead.
It is rare these days that we don't see that many blinks. I feel like it's a pretty popular relic, especially on, you know, aggressive compositions. And only the one blink, and it's on to Kirmi, and I'm not sure I've seen it get that much value. I mean, I feel like he may have used it once or twice in the first 12 or 15 minutes before he was able to get that second relic, but just hasn't able to be the consistent force that I think he was hoping to be with this pick.
I mean, he would have loved to have been ahead and allowed to do it constantly, right? But we've seen a few really good Blink ultimates from him. I've seen 3 4-man ultimates as well, so Kirmi going for the relic makes sense to me. You need to be that initiator for your team, and if you have to leap in to do it, you're probably just dying immediately afterward. Unfortunately for him, it kept him alive regardless, considering Leviathans so far ahead, but I wouldn't leave that entirely at the feet of the Hun bots. Has a lot to do with some of those objective team fights. Has a lot to do with those rotations from Shinto, the global presence from Ronnie, and adapting too. Just makes it so difficult for Kirmi to find his spots on map. Otherwise, the only one on the Leviathans I could really imagine picking up Blink is fine, okay, and it doesn't really seem to be necessary.
He doesn't really need it if he's hitting ultimates from that distance. Kana gets forced out before the tier 2 even gets threatened, and it falls down. Shinto grabs his tier 2 on the left side as well, and they've got the potential for a crazy split siege if they want to continue to force it, but looks like they will just take down all of the non-Phoenix structures on the map, and it's a complete tower deficit. All 6 taken down for the Leviathans. The Gilded Gladiators, they still have 6 towers to work through if they were to try and fight back, try and win a fight. But at this point, the Leviathans stepping back, I mean, this is certainly the disciplined play, but I mean, with how tough the siege is for your squad, I wonder if the Gladiators try and take this time to maybe look for something cheeky, maybe, you know, set up for this next Fire Giant spawn.
It'd be difficult to take a fight in neutral territory. Ease of initiation really comes into play on Siege. Taking a fight in the jungle would really alleviate a lot of those concerns with Leviathans. Adapting's gonna have a lot of great cutoff paths for those walls. Ronnie, of course, that global presence, even better in these narrow jungle corridors. So I think farm on map, play on Phoenix, probably the best call for the Gilded Gladiators. I'd be surprised to see them group up around that Fire Giant, but we'll have to see. It might not even come down to it. If the Leviathans can start restricting where the Gilded Gladiators are allowed to walk just by simply putting pressure on map, would force some of those backs. I like this from Shinto. Okay, you want to push the left side of the map? You want to collect some farm? I'll be here. If things get dicey, I won't be here with my global. If things get dicey on fire, I'll be there. I mean, it's just the strength of Chernobog. He's everywhere on the map.
Pressure from the Leviathans. The gold lead, the experience lead, the item deficit speaks for itself.
Oh, I'm lucky.
They have to back off. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it feels too dangerous for them to be outside of their base right now. That is where they want to take this siege. That's where they will have the best chance at successfully having a fight. But I mean, this is maybe where the split comes through. You see Adapting in mid. You see Shinto on the left-hand side of the map. They can threaten all 3 Phoenixes here.
Yeah, we're getting global diff here on the Gilded Gladiators. Gold diff as well, experience diff too. Okay, maybe it's just everything. The Leviathans have every single bit of control. Someone's going to have to answer Shinto shortly. It's not going to take them long to knock down that structure. Sending Kana though, he's such a major part of the team fight. The Gilded Gladiators split to the winds.
Levi's looking for the engage. Kana on the left-hand side, and Hunbat's in the middle lane. Kirby looking for Adapting. My damage though, just a couple of autos, and Shinto trading back, but Kana takes a ton. Is going to be forced to walk back to base, needs that healing. And on the right side, the engage might be there. They're walking in. Frenzy gets popped, and fine, okay. Forced to use the immunity relics all across the board. And a fight on the left-hand side. Kirmi goes big and takes down Shinto. So far, they've kept up all 3 birds, and they have to step back in. Adapting finds the answer back onto Kirmi. But they've delayed thus far. They have to keep healing, and the healing is just too much. They finally get one of the birds.
Kana in no man's land, dashes out, trades places with Adapting, but the Gilded Gladiators seem to want the fight. Ult in from Jake, taunts there, but he holds it perfectly.
Holds it for the Aegis, and fine, okay, falls because of it. They're not done either. Adapting, the engage from Kana, the dash in, and look, it's charged, it just needs the taunt, and it finds Purchase onto Adapting, but the turnaround is there, and Adapting uses the relics perfectly. Kana, maybe the next one on the chopping block, has to find escape on the left-hand side, and the Gilded Gladiators, they thought They had the chase down. They thought they had the advantage, but they've lost one. They might just lose Kana as well.
Wall's coming back up, and that is his life. Adapting, picks himself up a killing spree, and up to the air.
Up to the air and down to the ground. A double kill for the jungler. Adapting finds the support and the soul laner. And the Leviathans, they still have Fire Giant. They still have the healing. Outside, Changa's now fallen, but I mean, they've got this sustain coming through. But the Fear No Evil is back up, and a great punish comes through from the Gladiators. They maybe bite off a little bit more than they can chew.
He's got a lot of damage to play with here. Ronnie, not as tanky as he'd expect, will be able to make himself scarce there. Defense from the Guild of Gladiators, I think, much better than anyone would have expected. Leviathans had so much advantage going into that fight. You'd really expect all 3 birds to be down and the mission can be over, but a good ultimate from Kirmi onto Shinto after trading out with Kana just previously prevents the ADC from sticking around. Shinto gets re-involved, but hadn't quite got his relics back up from the last fight, so falls once more. The Guild of Gladiators to extend this game just a little bit longer. That said, I mean, left side Phoenix already down to half, both birds down. In mid and right, Fire Giant timer gonna be spawning up before too long now, but a minute out from that. Same verse here. I mean, the Guild of Gladiators cannot step up into neutral territory. It just can't happen just yet. The damage output behind the taunts, although decent, still not quite where you need it. Waiting on that 6-item power spike from Jang. Gonna be a pretty big deal here for the Gladiators. And so, I think you just put your hands together on the Chaos side and say, if we could just withstand one more Fire Giant, if we can stop that from happening, just keep our base alive, the game starts again to be just a little bit more even. That said, Leviathans have already done so much, they might not even have to wait on the Fire Giant. Any picks that happen on map now, you catch Kana in the jungle, you catch Kirmi in the jungle, any individual pick could just cost the Glads the game.
It's a big grouping from the Glads. They've actually caught Fino K here, forced to use the relic off the bat. But the rest of the team could come through to help.
That's
and Shinto is in and Adapting is in, and Kana's the first to fall. A full chase down now. The Leviathans running down mid lane. They don't have Fire Giant. They don't necessarily need it if they find some more picks. Will just be the one. But that's the danger. You find Fino K, you think he's alone? No, he's not. He's got the rest of his team there.
If it's anything but Changa, you probably just have your kill, but beads into the dance, just immediately gets him out of danger. Unfortunate. CC timing was good. Taunt, Fear No Evil afterward. DR doesn't really apply when fears are constantly applying, but Good Gladiators, again, not enough damage behind it. And there was so much immunity still available to the Changa. That Fino K just makes him look the fool. Second verse, we'll see if it's the same as the first, because it's Fino K again.
No beads available, and this time they might have the damage. A 3-man ultimate will keep them alive a little bit longer, and you're forced to use the Fear No Evil. All the while, though, it's 2 members of the Levi's pushing into the Titan room. They've got their own Titan pushing down as well, and it's a split engagement. The Levi's, they pick up Kirmi, a 1-for-1 across the map, and they take down the left bird.
Jake's being chased out. Wall's on the wrong side, but the slow connects. Adapting, no cooldowns. Jake just tanky enough. Will get himself out of there. Left side bird, though, as you said, taken. Mid and right weakened. The Guild of Gladiators distracted and without Kirmi. No one's watching horror as the Fire Giant is knocked down. Won't even be given that privilege. It happens far too quickly. Lance Leviathans pick up another.
Rongu with the wave, and Garu caught outside of the Phoenix and will fall. Now 2 in the gray screen. Kirmi up in just 15 seconds, but the Guild of Gladiators, this is a big ask. Double ADC to fight up against 2 weakened Phoenixes, and Fino K, he's on his way back from base. This is, I mean, you have to do the world, and with Adapting up, I don't know that you have it. A 2-man ultimate from the King, and he finds Snoopy with the help of Panda Cat, and they take down even more. Now 2 in the gray screen, the 2 carries, and the Leviathan still pushing forward.
Guild of Gladiators, nothing left to hide behind. It's just the Titan. You gotta protect that one. Kana forced to use both of his relics before the fight even truly starts. All of a sudden, a massive target on his back. The Leviathans, it's just crossing the T's. It's dotting the I's. It's finishing things out. think the win condition is just get into the Titan room.
Jangaru right off the bat in a 5 versus 4 defense, but with the damage in the back pocket, I don't know that the Gladiators can stop the damage from coming through. Fine, okay, down low, but Shinto and Panda Cat find 2, and they find the Titan along the way. Game 1 for the Levi's.
Levi's control the laning phase. Great pressure in both mid and duo affords them a whole lot of advantage going in towards the objectives. And then +1 gifted on first Gold Fury, plus Pyromancer at the exact same time. Tends to put you in a pretty decent position going forward. Once the Atlantis Leviathans had control, they never lost it.
Yeah, that control was staggering at times. It felt like as soon as they got those neutral objectives, they just couldn't lose a fight. And there was one back and forth fight, that left-hand side fight, where I think the Glads go 3 for 2. They get a counter buff invade off. They find the re-engage that they were looking for. But even then, the Levi's were just 2k up off of better neutral farming, I suppose. They just played the map better across the board.
I mean, they had pressure in every single lane, so by the time that fight had happened, you'd already lost so much to tower. They also controlled every bit of the neutral farm because adapting was bullying Jangaru so much, Ixchel struggling to get to those waves safely. Tough stuff. Gilded Gladiators lose on pressure, but I think the real turning point of that game is the first round of objectives.
A lot to answer back on if you're the Gilded Gladiators. Still have time to adapt, though, and go to the drawing board, and we'll be back for game number 2.
You truly haven't experienced Smite until you've had a chance to be in a live stage such as the Smite World Championships. So you've already got your tickets. It's a reminder that we are only 77 days away from the Smite World Championships in Arlington, Texas, January 12th through the 14th. It's going to be a phenomenal weekend of Smite. I'm excited. You should be excited to be jumping in. And if you can't make it there, definitely be tuning in live from home during the event. It's going to be so much fun. And that's what all of this build-up has been for this regular phase, and the phase that we're currently in right now, trying to figure out what our first 4 teams to potentially qualify for in, I think, just under a month's time. At this point, we're going to see which teams are already going to be making it there. It's a lot of hype around the event, and all right to do so. So make sure you're tuning into Worlds. If you're going there, hope to see you there. It's a phenomenal event, unlike anything else before. It's what got me into the Smite scene to begin with. I jumped in at World Season 2 when it's hosted at the Cobb. I've been at everyone since then, so make sure
going?
I'm going to be going. Are you going to be going?
I have work that week, actually.
You got to work that week?
Yeah, I got to cast some event.
You got to cast some game.
Yeah, hopefully I can make it. Unfortunately.
I hope you can make it too, Charlie. But first game that we went through, at least for today, Leviathans and Gladiators. I really don't know what to chalk it up to on this one, because the Gladiators, they're getting kills early, but they're not translating those kills to anything after. There's no objectives this early in the game that you can really go for. Pyros aren't spawned in. It's too early for Gold Furies. The first time that we see the Gladiators go for an objective, Leviathans walk up and Panic Cat takes it with a Supernova, and then from that point on, that felt like the downward spiral for the Gladiators.
Yep, like I said early on, burst towards objectives is going to be a big topic of contention. Sure, Kirmi had Fear No Evil, but Supernova is still the best burst on the map at that point. Shinto just dominates from level 5, essentially flies over to solo lane, make sure to punish Kana immediately after. Gank in mid lane, adapting on this Thor, popping off as well. It just seemed like the Leviathans were able to control, as you would expect in a Gladiator set, the objectives, and that's very important, right? I remember looking up at around 26 minutes saying, this is a 21,000 gold lead and the game is still not over. So the Guild of Gladiators definitely held on. I think a little bit troll of the Leviathans, to be honest. They probably should have ended a bit earlier just because it seemed like FineOK was getting, picked off solo by himself, or at least getting a lot of aggression put towards him just by nature of, hey, the Gladiators are going to group up and look for some sort of play. But yeah, look at this position where it's like 17,000 gold, and still the Leviathans weren't quite ready to end here just because I'm going to call it playing with their food a little bit. Should have been a bit quicker. Either way, the pressure on map, the objectives, and of course the fact that the Leviathans were able to split up their team fights so well just didn't feel like the Gladiators had a chance.
I think a bit of that split fighting is really what was emphasized around. Phoenix specifically had one player over in dual lane, one in mid, 3 over in the right. And the defense from the Gladiators, I should say, on that right side, Phoenix was strong until Adapting then decided to show up to the party. And I think that was kind of that go button for the Leviathans. Once Adapting showed up, now we're ready to fight. We're ready to go for an objective. Is Adapting here yet? Check. All right, cool. Let's go in. Alongside Shinto, 7-2 for the both of them, 7-2-8 for Adapting, 7-2-10 for Shinto on the Chernobog. And I think now as we start getting ready to dive into the next round of picks and bans, figuring out what you want to leave open. I don't know if I want to leave this Chernobog open against them. I don't want to be giving them Athena
Thor,
because Wrong U's been really good.
Thor.
I mean, you don't want to give Adapting Thor. At this point, the Gladiators have almost too much that needs to be banned away. So instead, I guess I should pivot the question of what would you like to see the Gladiators pick up in place of those picks that they might not be able to entirely ban away?
I want them to prioritize getting Chernobog for themselves. If they're not in that first pick spot, if they do decide to go for second pick, which they do, then they got to ban away, which in this case, that's what they've chosen. They want that second pick slot. So yeah, do not let the Leviathans first pick Chernobog. I think it's just too powerful. Shinto can control too much of the map. Already putting yourself down that much pressure with the global, I think it's just too much.
So for picks and bans, game number 2, things start off pretty much the exact same with the Baba Yaga and the Amaterasu. For the Leviathans, Gladiators have banned away Apwash. I just gotta imagine it's gotta be something like Chernobog Yamoja for the next couple of ones. Just because of how strong Shinto was on the selection in game number 1, I would not want to give that one over to the Leviathans again. Athena's just been so potent too. It's almost a double-edged sword right now where you want to take like 3-4 big picks away, but you only have a few bans to do so, and making sure that the Outwatch is in there. It is such a difficult one. Not wanting to give the Athena up at the very least, so the Guild of Gladiators ban that one away. maybe trying to hold the Umoja out for themselves, but leaving Umoja, Chernobog as options, not the best ones. Leviathans will take the Umoja away, so now a couple of big decisions to be made by the Gladiators. If I'm them, I'm just banning the Chernobog here. I'm not taking the risk.
Yeah, it's just not worth it, I think. There still is a lot of picks that the Gladiators might be worried about in place of that Chernobog, but at this point, it just seems like too much to try and risk because of how much presence Shinto had across the map in game number 1. I guess you could try and gamble and say, hey, maybe, this time around the Leviathan's going to prioritize the Raijin or something like that, but yeah, I just cannot imagine they want to deal with that global presence once again. Considering, again, right at level 5, man. It's just the second that level comes through. But it looks like they're going to try and grab the Raijin for themselves, because Leviathans, if they want to run back what they just did, will grab the Chernobog once again, and I don't see why they wouldn't.
Chernobog.
Honestly, Leviathans could probably run back a lot of their same composition that they had in the previous game. Is Chernobog, Sol, and Charon for their top 3. Now, unless we see the Charon picked up by the Gladiators, which at the moment we don't see a hover towards it. Instead, it's currently on the Ratatosker. Could see Rat Raijin as a combo. Gives you your flexibility with Raijin if you want to play him in mid or if you want to throw him in Soul lane. Ratatosker has been a good pick for a lot of the junglers, but instead, hover of Soul, lock of Ratatosker, so we will see Kirimi's selection. Then the Soul. So they're going to give the Raijin over to the Leviathans this time, assuming the Leviathans want to go with it. They can snap block that one for fine, okay.
Yeah, looks like they were a little bit more worried about the Soul pick. I mean, it did have pressure in duo. It was able to steal away a Fury. That burst is impactful. But that Raijin still brings so much damage, so much sustain, so much CC. And there's no way. The Leviathans have not had to think about a single lock this game. They're like, oh, cool. Like, you guys gave us the Cherno, you gave us the Raijin. Sure, maybe you think about the Charon, but after the performance in game number 1, I don't think about that one either. Not to say that the Gladiators aren't just giving up these extremely powerful picks and getting nothing in return. I think the Rat still does have tremendous value here in the early game. The Soul, we already saw last game how strong she can be. And now with the Morgan Le Fay, remember that was banned away in game number 1. Got good CC, decent actual ability confirmation. But you don't have too much frontline just yet. Even with these tankier mages, you're gonna want Awesome Jake's pick. I wouldn't be surprised if some do get banned in this next phase just by the Alliance Leviathans trying to limit what that duo lane can do. Because you already see the Soul. You know there's going to be a bit of pressure, but extra buff clear, a little bit of extra wave presence could be disastrous there. So probably some bans towards Awesome Jake in the future.
Do you see a Camazot's ban by the Gladiators? I think the ultimate question is, though, what does Awesome Jake go towards for the Gladiators team this time? Because the Charon has kind of been one of his fallback picks, now taken away from him twice. The Athena and the Umoja and now a Sobek have all been banned away. So where do we see Jake go towards for his next selection? Do have to highlight, at least for the Leviathans, there is still some potential that this Chernobog could just go over to Panda Cat in the duo lane. This Raijin could go to Shinto in mid, and we have potentially yet to have seen Final K's pick thus far, but we'll have to really keep our eyes exactly where this one goes, though.
But what if Final K takes the Charon?
What if he does take the Charon? That's also an option. And if we want to talk even about magical ADCs, I mean, Sol is the one that's standing out at the forefront, but I mean, Olorun and Freya both still there as options. Haven't really seen too much of them as of recent. From that dual lane, it's really been kind of the rise up of Sol, when at the very beginning of the phase, it was Olorun, Freya controlling the picks and bans, almost always making their way through. Sol kind of an afterthought. It's like, okay, they're both gone. I guess we'll look at Sol, but now the conversation seems to flip for the magical ADCs.
I mean, Sol's pretty hot right now.
She's always hot.
Yep,
she's the sun.
I'm glad you had my back on that one. With this case, though, I don't think Raijin goes anywhere but solo lane. Like, you can play him in mid, but I think a lot of these mid laners have realized he's so much better with a bit of defense online. You don't get punished as easily. You can actually use Thunder Crash aggressively and dash in instead of, using it to try and run away. So, while there is possibility, I would think that Final K takes that pick. Depending on the next one, which is going to be the Aokwang. We talked a bit on Waiting Room about how it could be played solo, but when Adapting's in the game, you probably want to give that Aokwang over to Adapting, one of his best picks for sure. All that with the Uller.
That's a Panda pick right there.
Yeah.
Well, it could be a Shinto pick.
Yeah, could be Shinto, could be Panda. Either way, we know where the ADCs are going. Yeah, everything but the two hunters are in question, and I think you give Shinto back the Chernobog, to be honest. Uller did get some buffs recently, Got to see how it's going to go into duo lane. Can Uller match the pressure of Soul at the moment, of Ishtar at the moment? That's going to be scary stuff, because of course it used to be ability-based hunters just come online immediately. They're so strong. That has not been the case for a while. These magical ADCs, Ishtar with those shotgun auto attacks, are going to have tremendous wave pressure. So I've been waiting to see someone lock in this Uller with the new buffs to see exactly how they're able to pilot him, if he is even viable. I was going to say stronger. Of course he's stronger, but was that enough of a buff to really put him into the limelight here? Because the buffs 2 is 2, sure, that's well and good, but there was a lot of issues with Uller's kit even before that patch. So we'll have to see. I'm excited to see how this Uller plays.
Yeah, to emphasize exactly what did happen with Uller, a little bit more base scaling in the Throne Axe portion of at least that first ability. But then the buffs between the power buff and the attack speed buff on his 2 and his 4 have now been swapped. So he didn't get any more or less, it's just the access to them. So now the attack speed buff is on that second ability, the power buff over on the opposite end for the ultimate this time. So it does kind of change up a little bit of the play style there. So all the players who have really become kind of accustomed to how Uller was played, kind of swapping up and around abilities, now maybe kind of changes a little bit of the God, but still keeps that same level of identity. So
if that was too complicated, you don't got to press 2 anymore in the middle of your combo.
To
That's
get power.
pretty much it.
Yeah.
You're going to get that power regardless. You can get the extra attack speed buff, or you can just not use it, an extra input you don't have to click anymore, and you can use it to run away after if you just want the movement speed.
yeah, basically just simplifies your full combo out there. So I think now kind of talking about the Leviathans, where this Uller goes, still some question. I looked up the 2 stats between both Shinto and Panda, and they're very similar. I think it's 58% win rate for Shinto on the pick, and a 63%, if I was not mistaken, for Panda Cat. So very, very even in that sense as to where it could go there. Do you have a preference on where you'd like to see it? Would you like to see this one more in the duo lane, or would you rather see this one kind of highlighted towards mid?
I want to see Panda Cat take it 100%. I want to see him jump in on wave 2, hit an axe, find that aggressive Uller play style to see if it's still even a possibility. Except if Panda Cat's not going to make it work, I'm not sure how many, players are going to be able to make it work. Of course, having the Chernobog in mid also makes it easier. You can fly to left, you can fly to right very easily. You're not going to miss too much farm. You could say adapting, hey, take a wave. I'm going to just zoom left, zoom right. So I just preferred Chernobog in that mid role just for the sake of globals. And then, of course, I want to see if Uller ADC can still work out.
Looking over at the Gladiators, going to be seeing probably a Hunter mid out of them now with the Ishtar kind of selected alongside that Soul. Morgan Le Fay likely slanted towards that solo lane instead, with Kirimi piloting the Ratatosker for the Gilded Gladiators. That gives them a little bit of that semi-global they were kind of missing out on in that previous game. They had the full global with the Athena, but now with the Athena taken out of the question, they have maybe not an easy answer to the Chernobog, but something to try and match it. Can the Gilded Gladiators fight back against the Leviathans to tie things up, or the Leviathans put us up 2-0? Let's jump into game 2 with the casters.
Thank you so much, J-Mac and Trelly. You still have got Frog, you still have Mifflin, and Doug, of course, taking us through the battleground. And some interesting picks in this one. We've got the Uller coming on the board for Panda Cat. As predicted on the desk, we've got the Morgan Le Fay solo coming through. We saw Sot play this last week. Some interesting picks for sure. And maybe most interesting of all, the Twitch poll has gone up a little bit for the Gladiators. Twitch chat feeling a little bit 3% more confident in the Gladiators to take this game number 2. Maybe due to the compositions that get selected.
Yeah, double Hunter draft, and the Leviathans did pick off-kilter selections, so maybe the Gilded Gladiators get a little bit more favoritism from chat themselves. I am personally of the opinion that Ull is like bottom 10 picks in Smite, full stop.
Wow.
I just do not love that god. We'll see. Ull from ahead, like if Ull's 3 levels up, he's like top 2, and it's not close. But getting that lead generally tends to be pretty difficult. How he interacts on wave, especially into like Mage Hunters, doesn't quite have the boxing potential. Doesn't quite have as much ability damage as Mage Hunters either. Let's see how it plays out. Panda Cat always wanted to go towards this pick when he's feeling especially confident though. And if last game's anything to go by the 10-minute mark, he might just have that 2 to 3 level lead. And if that's the case, he might just be one-shot.
I mean, Trelly said on the desk that he wants to see this aggressive play style from the Uller. Jumping in level 2, hitting the axe, trying to get the full combo off onto this Soul. You see a little bit of poke there in the middle lane. And hear me out of this Ratatosker, a first pick focus selection for the jungler, the Gladiators. And that's got my ears perked up because, I mean, last time we saw the last pick Hunbats, we saw Kirmi, you know, maybe through no fault of his own necessarily, the composition didn't allow him as much to get involved. But, I mean, that's Ratatosk here. Kirmi's tired. Kirmi wants to be everywhere on the map if he can be, and he gets the global pressure to help make that happen.
Yeah, he got global diff a few times in game 1 team fights, just couldn't quite get there before adapting had made his stamp known on map. So we'll see if the rat adaptation is exactly what he had needed. I think maybe the most important thing is that the good Gladiators now have lanes they can play through. Jangaru dash cut!
Oh my goodness, the block is beautiful from adapting, but he gets pushed up against the wall. And it's first blood for the Gladiators. Answer back by Shinto. They managed to punish adapting for making a beautiful play.
Yeah, great target selection from Kirmi there. Just says, all right, we're dealing with adapting because my boy Jangaru is not getting out of here alive any other way. Doesn't make it out of there alive. Regardless, though, thanks to the efforts of Shinto. But finding first blood on the good Gladiators, considering how poorly that fight had started. Dash forward from adapting, catches the dash from Jangaru. Tough stuff, but the good Gladiators show a bit of fight back here in the early.
Fight back is what they're looking for, and I think especially on this adapting, on this Sao Kwong, rather. One pick that is not the most known for getting involved early. This is one we've seen from Oath, of course, a little bit known to go back towards this pick, but past that and past maybe some appearances in the solo lane, we haven't really seen a ton about Kwong. Fine, okay, though. He gets focused out early. Morgan Le Fay and Kirmi come together, and that's right around the blue buff spawn timer. I wonder if they'll be around the corner to try and steal that one away. The dash in and the steal from Kirmi. He's getting involved.
Yeah, good stuff. A lot of that does come from Kana. Had done the majority of Final K's HP before Kirmi had gotten there. Morgan Le Fay, so good at putting that poke in, especially throughout that early Fairy Fire. Just difficult to deal with. Easy rotation from Kirmi. Connects the Acorn, which he had upgraded on map. One of the few primary strengths of Rat throughout the early is that he doesn't need to go back to base to hit his first power spawn. So upgrades on map, rolls through with the long range Acorn stun, and Final K dealt with very easily. Also burns through those beads. Further rotations towards Final K on the docket for the Gilded Gladiators jungle.
This is a point that I was trying to get to in game number 1 before some action broke out, and that is really like what makes a mage solo. We've seen some standard ones, you know, like the Chang'as one we've seen before, even some, you know, Op Washes one we saw before this season, but we get the Raijin picked up, we get the Morgan Le Fay picked up, and they're all going the same build. Like everything's coming out, it's an identical build essentially. What makes a mage solo be powerful in the current meta?
Fortunately, that question was answered by smarter minds just earlier this week. If you tune in to the waiting room, we had Haddix around, and he had said, look, mage solos, they're there because they've got consistent damage poke, they've got good utility, itemization tends to favor them, but maybe the most important thing is that warriors just aren't very good right now, and so you got to look somewhere else. So with the majority of mage solos in meta, you see long-range utility. Kana's got long-range CC on Morgan Le Fay. Final K's got it from the ultimate, as well as just that Raiju slow, decent survivability, and all right initiation.
Dash in from Fino K, and that's his initiation onto Kana, but it will just be an ultimate trade for the time being. Meanwhile, Shinto's beads get forced in the mid lane. It's a little bit of pressure on either side of the map as adapting, trying to answer back, but a lot of this pressure is focused around Kirmi for the Gilded Gladiators, and no surprise there. I almost thought Shinto misclicked there, like he meant to 2 through his first ability, but instead did not. But this time Kana, he does not have the ultimate for the escape and will not be able to escape. Adapting grabs the enemy solo.
Yeah, I'm really surprised to see the Gladiators just okay with Shinto being aggressive. Perhaps eyes elsewhere on map. Gold Fury will go quick. Leviathans not aware of it. And Kirmi just gonna snipe it away, but does he make it out alive?
He uses the beads and into the ultimate early. He knew exactly what kind of pressure he was under, and the Glads, they lose the soul later, but they get a steal and they get the Gold Fury. And we haven't even talked about this double ADC Fafnir. They can just do that at 5 minutes.
Yeah, simple stuff. Just burn through that objective. Fafnir's so good at that exact style of play. Panicat, perhaps in danger there. Has been stuck in his tower for a while now. clearly struggling to keep up with that poke potential of the Soul on the other side. Stun 2-1 combo. They call it the Barra combo on Soul. I just call it the design of the character. Want to line up that slow before you go for the massive nuke, but that is a death sentence for Panda Cat. Unfortunately, he has those beads and the shielding from Wrong View may just keep him safe. Instead, the Gilded Gladiators content themselves with wave pressure back to their own camps. Levi is going to need somewhere on map they can start playing through soon. Kana already starting to nurse a pretty significant lead. Kirmi very present on this rat, I believe about a half level up there. The mid lane's doing well. Shinto's controlling a lot of that neutral farm. Jang really struggling in that 1v1. Forced back to his tower once more. But playing around your Chernobog does not play to the strengths of your Chernobog. You want to be anywhere else so that he can join you. So if Adapting feels the need to play through mid, if the side lanes are struggling too much, would even further weaken that composition, the core identity of this Leviathans draft.
With 2,000 gold lead early on here for the Gilded Gladiators, and that's got a lot to do with Kirmi on map and their objective control as well. You can see where Kirmi is right now. He's deep in the enemy jungle around that gold camp. Thought he may go for a gank attempt on this left-hand side, but now they burned beads on Shinto a while ago, and they never got a chance to take advantage. That happened with Final K as well. They burned his beads for second blood, I believe. The Gilded Gladiators, Kirmi came over, and they weren't able to take advantage of that as well. So I feel like, you know, little hints here and there where the Gilded Gladiators could be finding even more opportunities that they're not in a position to punish.
I mean, opportunities are not necessarily always kills either. Those beads are burnt, and the Gilded Gladiators say, okay, we'll go to Gold Fury. And if they show up, they'll show up without beads. So I think so far a very strong pace from the Gilded Gladiators. Liked everything I've seen from them so far. Kirmi playing active on map, as you said, has been constantly making sure Final K is struggling to confirm that blue buff. This time around, is able to do it with the help of Adapting, but even just forcing the rotation from Adapting makes them split up that farm a little bit. Gilded Gladiators doing well for themselves. And it's not as if their composition doesn't scale well in the late game either. They may struggle a bit for initiation, a lot of single target on their side, but double hunter draft, mage solo, it all screams late to me.
Ultimate from Jake into pressure here. Adapting is going to force him to run away. That dash, though, it's got a ton of range, but won't be enough for Adapting not to catch up. The CC is good, and everything gets slowed down over a double ultimate, and Kirmi helps out on the re-engage. Rongu stunned out, and Awesome Jake is about to de-transform, but before he does, he burns the beads off of Panda Cat, and this engagement just keeps on giving. The jump from Adapting is there, and Panda Cat finishes off the support. A 1-for-1 across the board.
Oh man, if Kirmi's just a little bit healthier there, that fight is so split up. Maybe you're able to at least punish Panda Cat for leap over wall. Jake does so much there too. Cloak the Ascetic Beam just outside of Adapting's execute range. Base Adapting so far forward to the Gilded Gladiator side of the map, creating those opportunities for kills. Unfortunately though, a late rotation from Shinto. Stop me if you heard it before, we have. This is the entirety of game one. Absolutely crushes what began as a phenomenal fight for the Gilded Gladiators. That is the strength of Chernobog. If you're not fighting on top of him, you'll get there every single time. Just got to make sure on the side of the Gilded Gladiators that they've got those get out of jail cards and you've got an escape path available. You need to be very fast on your initiation, very fast on your strike, and a fast get out, or Shinto's going to punish you.
Let's take a look at this difference in builds between the mid lanes. I almost thought that Jangaru would want to try and match this aggression, maybe go the Aussie himself, but instead chooses the stacking item. Is that just because Shinto wants to be rotating early on?
Well, maybe Shinto wants to take those boxing matches consistently, so having that Aussie available to him pretty important. If you're starting every fight with ult, fail not, just makes sense to me too. Snoob in some trouble here. Early Kansas to separate.
Adapting around the back, and maybe he did not expect the rotation to come through as Kirmi. He's got to run the other way into the ultimate, but I don't know that this can be a re-engage. This has to be an escape. And you're right, cancels the disapparate a little bit early, and he might have died anyways, but definitely seals his fate with that one.
I think just wanted to turn around, deal some damage before he goes down. Immediately goes in the ultimate. CC immunes Ronnie's ultimate himself, but not exactly the greatest usage there. Maybe if you disapparate through, hold on to some of that survivability. continue to fight after. But the Adapting's rotation essentially seals the fight. Kana forcing that ultimate very early. Now only has beads with the CC immunity. Ronnie should just be fine. Charon is just so survivable. If you can catch the dash, sure, but I don't even think Jang's got the damage for it to matter.
Arcade's back into mid, but awesome Jake and Rangi. One thing I've noticed this game, they've been a little bit more active than usual. I mean, sure, we've had more fights around the left side than perhaps any other game, but in particular, these earlier rotations out of the dual lane, where you see that early gold, where you see some CC coming through right there in the mid lane. And I almost expect the Gladiators to look for this basically right now. They did the first Gold Fury at 5 minutes in, and they've wasted time letting it go to 11 minutes. It's been on the map for a little bit, and with this Fafnir, they don't want to waste any time. Down to half HP, but Shinto, he sniffs it out this time. The rest of the Leviathans are there to try and contest. It's being juggled, but adapting on the backside of the fight forces Kirmi up into the air, and the Gladiators, they're at a disadvantage. The health bars are so low, and Kirmi, he has to make it out of there. All they've done, though, the rotation from Finoke, the Levi's fight back and take the Oni Fury.
Just these ultimates from Shinto are so stifling, even with Jake having the instant stun response. Shinto lands in the shadow, immediately stunned out. It's beads, dash in a wall, I'm in your backline, and I'm landing crits because I have fail not. Unfortunate stuff for the Gilded Gladiators, taking just far too much damage off rip on engagement. Didn't want to stick around on the Fury because they're concerned about that global taunt-in from Rongyu, essentially controlling the entirety of the Gold Fury pit. The Leviathan's able to turn things around cleanly. Adapting too, gets a bit fortunate. Pass right into Kirmi as he's going into that ultimate. Does so much damage that Kirmi can't even reinitiate. And Leviathan's gifted a Gold Fury, puts it right back at even. Doesn't exactly instill confidence in the Gilded Gladiators, who've generally struggled around that mid-game pace. So far, Shinto unanswered. Won't have beads in the next 90 seconds. Adapting also without beads in the next 2 minutes. Gotta be some targets. Really do want to start with this Chernobog. He is becoming a massive issue.
Yeah, I think you have to start getting Kana involved as well. He's got a lead over there, and one of the few matches where he's maybe had the pressure before that even happens. Those Leviathans, they'll hop on the Pyromancer. Before the Gladiators can respond, it's another double taking of those neutral objectives. And now the Panda Cat's been left alone on this left-hand side, maybe trying to look a little bit more for those axes on the aggression. As Jangaru trading ultimates in mid as well. This is the day Shinto's a level ahead. He's just fighting 1v2. He can just feel comfortable trading that damage back. This Chernobog is so powerful.
He is. Was at least benefiting from the fact that he was not the target there. Jangaru really wanted to deal with Ronnie, who narrowly escapes with his life. All the while, Shinto free casting the fight. If that's going to become a developing trend, starting to concern Jake. The ultimate, but Shinto, his ult's not just for initiation, but a safety too.
Defense down into the Aegis, but he can waste so much time. The Aegis, he stays in the wall, and that allows Rangi to rotate over now. Hear me into the ultimate, and Finoke and adapting coming through. Jake has to give away his life, and will just try and waste the time that he can over the wall. The support falls down for the Gilded Gladiators, and just at the cost of trying to find an engage, but with how much time Shinto wasted, the whole team was able to come help.
Yeah, tier 1-for-1 trade, but kill over to the Leviathans, keeps things in their favor. Fortunately for the Gilded Gladiators, Kirmi had vacated and gone over to the right-hand side, knocks down the tier 1 tower on right, pushing that trade a little bit more so towards the Gilded Gladiators, but it's thin margins once more. We'll see if Snoopy can tip the scales.
Gotta be careful here to separate, about to end and adapting, weighing the pros and cons of trying to find an engage there. Jangaru and Snoopy were right next to each other, so that damage would have been staggering if he tried. But the Gold Fury, the sights on the Primal, as that's next to spawn. We saw Beacon taken down a little bit earlier, and that's the first game in recent memory where 2 Gold Furies have fallen before the first Beacon even spawned. And now we're close to that 3rd Gold Fury, and Rocky's pushed up in kind of a weird spot, but they don't have the damage to engage onto the Charon. But I mean, this early positioning seems to be favored by the Leviathans if they want to stick around and sort of set a trap for this next objective.
They can catch anybody out or force them back. Gold Fury spawning so soon. would make it a little bit easier for them to take the defensive positioning. Leviathan's also controlling Oracle Vision, realize that should the Gilded Gladiators even feel confident in their ability to burn the objectives, sneak away, not exactly in the cards. It's worth noting though, and Jake's playstyle has really lined up this way. Every single game so far, I mean only the one previous, but has been pretty significant leads out of support for Awesome Jake. Has come at a cost though. Each time you'd think, well, maybe if Jake's splitting a little bit less from Snoopy, he'd be still ahead right now. Or if maybe he's splitting a little bit less from Jengaru, there'd be a lead in mid or at least a bit of parity. Instead, this Fafnir, taking a whole lot of farm, has put him in a very strong spot, 2 levels up. Whether or not that adds up to a conducive team fight.
Ultimate burn in mid, and Jake's got his ult channeled as well. Damage onto the Primal Fury, shredding fast, but watch for the ultimate from Rongu. The wave only hits 1, and there's no follow-up available. But this Frenzy gets popped, the Primal Fury, it's secured by the Gladiators, and they may even look for the fight afterwards. Engage coming from Kirmi, looking to land on the branch. Rongu's going to be the target and taken down. The Glads get the objective, they get the support, and Panda Cat is forced to use the Aegis. The Gladiators get a ton, and they have to find their way out of the enemy jungle now.
Beads and Aegis off of Panda Cat. Jake's got stun, connects it. Damage is there from Snoop, but Panda Cat barely makes it out.
Just able to get around the wall, but Jake can't say the same. Adapting, finds the execute, and Snoopy doesn't get the back off. He tries to play the min-max right around the wall, but Adapting finds it, and he'll have the backup from Shinto if they want to continue this fight. Meanwhile, Finoke, he finds Jengaru on the other side on the attempted escape, and Adapting, he's looking for it and he finds it! Styles on Snoopy on the left side, and the Levi's, they managed to find a few picks.
Gilded Gladiators were not on the same page there. Panda Cat misses the axe. Kirmi, reaction beads to the sound effect regardless, so might as well have hit it. Panda Cat finds the value anyway. Had the Gilded Gladiators just played around Snoopy and Jake, if Kirmi sticks around, if Kana makes the rotation, if Jang's playing a little bit closer, Panda Cat dies, and they're together to defend against Adapting. Instead, it's reeling conveyor belt team fight. Force Leviathan's back. Pyromancer pulled and taken. At what cost?
What cost? Kana, he'll lose his life at the very least. Awesome Jake has to jump away for safety, but Finoke chases, and this might open their eyes to a re-engage, at least force the beads out of the Raijin. Finoke, he is not backed up by the rest of his team, so he's got to be careful there on the damage. And this time it's a Levi's attempted pull. They pick it up, but the Gladiators' response is good, and this time it's them taking both of the neutrals.
It is, but hasn't exactly net them the same lead the Leviathans got to enjoy in Game 1. Instead, it's just about closing up a bit of that gap the Leviathans established for themselves. Gilded Gladiators, though, still very strong right now. This 3-man core of Snoopy, Jengaru, and Awesome Jake have got a whole lot of damage to play with. Perhaps we're even considering going for a bit of a cheeky Fire Giant. Instead, though, lock eyes with the Leviathans. Finoke, Panda Cat, Rongu, all on this side of the map, and Snoopy not long for this world.
That damage is huge from Panda Cat, but the rest of his team needs to follow up, and Snoopy just one auto from being taken down. Jengaru joins him in the grave, and after Uller gets it all started, Panda Cat not only lives, but his team follows up and grabs 2.
Once more, the Gilded Gladiators just not all on the same page. That 3-man core deathballing on the right side maybe could have worked out had they had the allies nearby, but Kirmi's over on left. Kana's just pushing on his lane. Gilded Gladiators use both of their DPS, Jengaru and Snoopy, 15 seconds for grayscale in synchronicity. Get to respawn together, but also will respawn into a 5-man Fire Giant Leviathans. Will probably make short work of these structures.
They certainly have the auto attack damage themselves. No Fafnir to back it up, but you add an Adapting Ao Kuang to that core, and you're not really struggling to find these towers. It's a 3-2 split just now for the Leviathans, but with Kana rejoining the fight, he actually uses the ultimate, and that's because the follow-up is on the way. Jake over the wall as well, and Shinto will fall. Kana finds the last hit. Look at Adapting on the other side of the fight as the wave comes through, and the Leviathans continue to push forward. Jake's bitten off a little bit more than he he can chew, and Panda Cat finds himself on a killing spree. Kana forced into the Aegis, but that's not enough to keep him alive. And it's a 1-for-2. The reaction to trade back Shinto's death, but they've got to be careful. They can't overstep, and the Gladiators, they're defending.
Good defense from the Gilded Gladiators keeps that Phoenix alive. Kirmi's damage, Angaru, Snoopy on respawn. Just enough to keep the Leviathans at bay. And losing Fire Giant on both Shinto and Rongyu is significant. Is it going to prevent the Leviathans from knocking down the tier 2 on left? Probably not. Is it going to prevent the Oni Fury from going their way? Probably not, but it does keep the base alive for the Gilded Gladiators. Gives them a second lease on defending the Fire Giant just a little bit later on. And this time around, I don't think it's as simple for the Leviathans. The gold lead is not as significant as it was in Game 1. The Gilded Gladiators have shown enough fight back in neutral territory that I'm confident in their ability to look for an exchange. Pretty far forward here. Doesn't have lead for a second. Should have it now. Not going to get him far.
It just gets channeled now down, but the ultimate is off the mark, and Shinto, he teleports in with his ultimate. He'll immediately get traded though, and the damage shifts targets. Adapting, finds one in a trade back, but a 2-for-1 thus far, and the Gladiators, they lose 2 as well. Panda Cat finds a double over the wall though, and the Bladed Arrow gets Panda Cat on the board. 3-for-2 comes over and evens out the fight.
Snoopy not going to get there for that tier 2 tower, but can certainly keep their Phoenixes alive. A 3-man core of the Leviathans. A struggle for actual siege, so I believe tier 2 fall back, Oni Fury. It's a roundabout path. They've taken a scenic route, but still arrive at the exact same destination. Every single tower is 6 stripped away by the Leviathans. Oni Fury not too far behind it. The Gladiators once more should fight in the jungle. This time another team fight arrives, maybe around that Pyromancer. Leviathans are playing a pretty significant advantage so far as relics are concerned. Kirmi, in particular, not having that lead in Aegis and being maybe the key initiator for the Gilded Gladiators, really going to hurt them in any jungle corridor team fight. But playing haphazard half maybe willing regardless to take a fight.
Yeah, I want to highlight Panda Cat because I think on the desk, Trelly rightfully pointed out that a little bit of an early, you get early pressure, you get a 3-level lead, you get, aggression on this god, and he looks unstoppable. Panda Cat, he's been rocking this in the late game. He comes in late in fights and dominates, finds a couple of combos and cleans up right there. Early in fights, he found an axe earlier on to get everything going. He's making a case for this Ullr to be a considerable engage hunter in these late game fights.
Single target stun from long range, pretty decent. Should you be allowed to cast it. Panda Cat has been given so much space by Shinto in adapting to massive targets that the Gilded Gladiators have dedicated the majority of their time to dealing with. And so, Panda Cat, of course, looking very good at 5-0-6, 11 out of 16 affected on this Ull, just near the top of those damage charts. And all of a sudden, in the hyper late game, once Bluestone has been finished up, Bluestone Brooch, by the way, for Panda Cat, just a hail of arrows from downtown. Going to do upwards of 20, maybe 30% of some of the squishier targets.
Wow, even the tanky targets. This Awesome Jake gets knocked down to 60% HP there with one combo through. And I think, I'm not sure they're super worried about something like the Fire Giant secure, right? And that's where my eyes go on if the Gladiators feel a little bit more comfortable in their jungle fight this time around. They're still down in gold after that last objective, but not as far down as they were in game number 2. Not as poor at the jungle fight as they were perhaps in game number 2 either. Potentially looking for the right opportunity. In fact, they're the ones trying to start the aggression.
Just trying to hold in, get some damage to the Leviathans before the Fire Giant is properly pulled. Fire Giant up, Shinto on split push, and it's the classic. Gilded Gladiators now going to feel some pressure. Feel himself on map. Connect some CC onto Fine. Okay, burn away those beads. Should make something happen soon. Shinto getting some significant work done.
Jump in from Awesome Jake. The CC doesn't follow up quite yet. Fine okay with no beads, but they don't have eyes on adapting either. And that might be the go button into the Draconic Corruption. And Awesome Jake, he's looking for the jump forward, but great relic usage from Panda Cat, and it's Kirmi following up on the dive. Meanwhile, the rest of the Levi's, they've turned on to Snoopy, and they'll find Changaru as well. Kirmi answers back 1, but the Levi's have done enough. They take down 3. They'll find 4 with Kana and Kirmi. He's full HP, but he is far away from the rest of the fight. He does not have enough to contest 5 Leviathans.
No, he might not have enough to make it out of here alive. Panda Cat's real fast on this Ull. Can just chase for just about ever. Even just preventing the back from Kirmi simplifies the Phoenix Siege. Might get more done. Kirmi nearly turns it, but Panda Cat takes him down. Delayed deicide. The Gilded Gladiators. It's not exactly just 4 on their Phoenixes. We'll call it 5 because the Chaos Titan, Order Titan is getting involved.
11 seconds on Jangaru, 5 seconds on the dual lane for the Gilded Gladiators. And I think that's enough to prevent the end thoughts from the Leviathans. But they'll take a lot. The mid Phoenix, the left Phoenix. The Glads still have to deal with that Order Titan. That'll delay them a little bit longer from pushing out of their base. And after that jungle fight goes so horribly. I mean, what is it just forced too hard? Is the engage in different spots? Like, what goes wrong in that fight?
They gave up Chernobog, felt the pressure to start the fight. Couldn't quite find it because the Leviathans were playing slippery. And then once the all-in engage comes through from the Gladiators, Shinto says, okay, well, I've already dealt with their Titans, so I guess I'll jump into a shadow and simply cut them in half. And that's exactly what happens. The Leviathan's getting a whole lot of value from that Chernobog pick. Pyromancer on map, already 2 Runic Bombs in play, not to be a third. The Gladiators, they keep their presence up somewhat on the right-hand side, but I'm thinking now, might as well just let this Fire Giant go.
The last couple times you stepped up to a jungle fight, you lost about 4,000 gold after the Leviathans win that fight. And inevitably it's happened. The result has been the same each and every time in these small engagements. The Leviathans just continue to find these wins. The Gladiators, I don't know if it's too much forcing when they see Shinto trying to farm up on the left-hand side, but the Leviathans using the macro game, the map pressure of this Chernobog perfectly, and it makes the Gladiators feel like they have to find something or else they'll just get punished. They'll lose their Titan.
Yeah, it's an issue of initiation. If Jake's on the Athena like he was in Game 1, this playstyle much harder to execute for the Leviathans. Dash forward from Fine, okay. And who cares? They're making it happen 4v5.
Damage is onto 2, and Panda Cat's been left alone. And the backline is shut down onto the ADC. And Kirmi finds adapting and pushes him out as well. Snoopy looking for the damage, and Fine okay gets the help he needs. A somewhat even fight to start, but the Leviathans, all they need was Shinto, and he teleports over and finds another answer. It's Kirmi, he gets in, but he won't even find the pick. Fine okay stays alive through all of it, and it's only Jangaru remaining for the Gladiators.
I like the idea from Kirmi. Unfortunately, not exactly able to execute on it. Immediately goes in towards that Aegis. He's about 3 seconds away from the beam. Instead, loses his own life. The Leviathans start their death march on the Titan.
They've got fire minions. They've got all 3 Phoenixes. And after a couple of seconds, they're going to have the Titan as well. This is disrespectful, man. Jangaru's in base. He's just trying to survive. And after some time, they will take down the Titan. And the Leviathans are up 2-0.
Looks a little bit better from the Gilded Gladiators this time. Some global presence from Kirmi. Presence in the early game as well. Keeps them slightly afloat, but a few too many objective fights go their way for the Leviathans. Leviathans, of course, playing perfectly around that Chernobog, just completely decimating the map and then also getting involved in the team fight tends to tip things in their favor. Gilded Gladiators, at this point, maybe just ban the Chernobog. That seems to be what the majority of the league has agreed on. It seems to be somewhat of a consensus between the other 7 teams. We'll see if the Gladiators get there.
Yeah, I think I was surprised when they let it through Game 1. And then I was even more surprised when they let it through in game number 2. And this time, ready for this? I'll be even more surprised if they let it through in game number 3. That one would shock me personally. I'm looking over at the solo lane. I mean, these mages kind of has to find some pressure. Either way, back to the drawing board once again for the Gilded Gladiators. They're trying to avoid the clean sweep as they're looking to adapt for game number 3, and we'll be back after the break.
Bit of a scrappy game here between the Leviathans and the Gladiators in game number 2. A couple of big battles in the mid lane kind of early on to set up the pacing for the Gilded Gladiators, but from what we know of the Leviathans, this is a team that is able to scale up even from behind. A couple thousand gold, not enough to keep these two teams separated apart from each other. Once start getting down to nitty-gritty objectives, Leviathans are able to pull through for themselves and take a lead here and then win out game number 2, Trelly.
Yeah, I mean, stop me if you heard this one before. The Gilded Gladiators.
Stop.
Oh, sorry. That's my
you were just saying their name.
Yeah, no, the Gilded Gladiators pull an early lead, or at least get a little bit of action early. They find some kills, they find some Gold Fury, and then they can't translate that into late game. The Leviathans, obviously a team that are very good at translating that early lead, or at least, staying a little bit on top of things into, hey, we're going to group up around objectives, we're going to use our global presence across the map, we're going to just be better in these fights. You would have stopped me if you didn't already. That's the idea here. The Gilded Gladiators, unfortunately, still not able to really translate any of that early pressure into, actual Fire Giants, actual team fights that they're winning post 15, 20 minutes. It's still the biggest difference maker between them being able to beat some of these top teams or just getting a win in that column. It's this late game has not been able to round out for them.
Final K on the Raijin, really making his impact known across the map, and I think that's a bit of the difference between these two solo lane mages is where Morgan Le Fay has a lot of really good poke, has some decent CC, a little bit sustained with that ultimate. The extremely low cooldowns afforded to this Raijin just make him such an oppressive solo laner to go against, and just to try and fight whenever it comes down to the late game. Not to mention, by the way, Panic Cat able to free cast in some of these fights on the Uller with some of his recent buffs of starting to show a bit of his mark there. But I think ultimately for me it boils down to the Gilded Gladiators need to stop giving over such strong picks to the Leviathans. It's hard to do. It's hard to just say stop giving them good picks because there's so many out there right now. But I think the number one that has to change it was the change that you'll see behind me on the screen where the Gilded Gladiators are going into that first pick slot. This is the time where I want to see them take the Chernobog if it's left open, and the Leviathans, if they're not going to ban that one away, has to be picked up because, I mean, Shinto, it was a 7-2 game 1, a 6-2 game number 2. He's hot on this pick. You've got to take him off of it.
Yeah, I mean, even if that's assuming that the Leviathans even give you a chance to grab the Chernobog, right? Which I feel like they probably don't because they know exactly how impactful it can be. Because Shinto has just shown us twice in a row, right? that global presence is just too much to deal with in most cases. So, we called for the ban, or called for the not giving over the Leviathans twice now. Hasn't worked out. So now, in the first pick position, we'll have to see if the Atlantis Leviathans show that same level of priority towards not giving it over to the Gladiators, or if they're just able to look towards, some of these more support picks or even some of the mages that have been dominating the meta. I do like the fact that the Gladiators are, changing things up. They're not just running back the same picks. They're not playing the same style every time. That definitely helps trying to, stop the momentum of the Atlantis Leviathans, but we can't say it enough. This Chernobog, Shinto is getting away with far too much. There was a couple kills towards him. It wasn't like he's going undying, but the value you get from that ultimate, it's too difficult to try and deal with at the moment.
Yeah, this Chernobog really has just been a problem for just about everybody to try and deal with here. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm stalling as I currently look it up. 99% ban rate across the entire phase, pick ban rate across the entire phase on the Chernobog might be a good indication of how good this god is that all except for probably a single game, teams have been prioritizing this pick. So, I mean, at this point, it's essentially a must pick, must ban. If you're in that first pick slot and it's open, you need to take it for yourself. If you're in second pick, you probably want to ban that one away. We'll see if the Chernobog makes its way through for the Gladiators to be able to pick up. Will Leviathans ban that one away? And then what will the remaining bans be for these two teams? Gladiators will start things off with an Athena ban. And I think to me, this spells that they want to get the Chernobog for themselves. They don't want to give up some of the top picks surrounding the Chernobog, especially, I would say, the Athena. It's been one of Wrong U's best picks so far this phase. So I like the adjustment for the Gladiators here in Game 3 to take that first pick spot, but the Leviathans have that better adjustment.
Like,
they ban the
crazy.
Chernobog, they ban the Emoja.
They said, that's wild. Their first pick, we're not going to give them Chernobog. That was easy. Have to see what the Gilded Gladiators get in that first pick spot, considering you would have liked to take the Chernobog now that it's away. Raijin's still available. Definitely something that the Gladiators could get their hands on. Don't think they would ban it in this position. Leviathans, they have the ability to take that one away as well. With that, though, remember the Thor was something that was banned away from adapting. He had a fantastic performance on that pick in game number 1. So do the Gilded Gladiators ban that instead? And that is exactly what they'll do. They said, hey, the Thor's too much. We're not going to try and grab it. We don't have anyone that really loves playing it. And there's no way we're giving it over towards adapting, especially if Raijin gets left open, then you're sort of forced into it. So I like that call. Make sure that adapting doesn't get the same presence that he had. Not like the Ao Kuang didn't look fantastic as well, but Thor, a little bit more oppressive to deal with. So the Gladiators should be able to grab their Raijin here if they want it, but the Soul, I was going to say, the Soul has also been a priority pick for them. Didn't get the same amount of value, but they don't want it going over to Panda Cat either.
Panda Cat had a great showing on it game 1. It's not going to make sure to give him a pick that he's been very comfortable on over the course of this phase. They're at Ratatoskr banned by the Leviathans, just to show a sign of respect towards Kirmi and his presence in that second game. But the one pick that has been consistently taken away over the course of the first 2 games was the Amaterasu. Now that one has been left open and will be our first warrior, actually, I believe, being picked up for today for the solo lane. And then a Raijin will move away from that solo, go over towards the mid lane. So for the first time in a while, we're actually seeing Raijin back in, I don't want to necessarily say back in his proper home, but back where we've come to know the god, at least up until this most recent meta.
Amaterasu going to help with those objectives, though, and that's been where these games have been won pretty hard for the Leviathans towards late game, right? Being able to get there first, get that extra passive onto the objective, and just sort of shred through it. Charon,
do not forget
another
the name,
contested
Morgan
pick this
Le
set.
Fay.
This time goes over to the Gilded Gladiators with the Morgan Le Fay. So 3 magicals, already a lot of CC, and some good burst damage. I definitely like this composition from the Glad so far. They are going to need a bit of physical damage later on in the draft, but so far they've got, you know, just about everything you would want from a top 3, whereas Leviathans, they almost never pick Adapting's pick here. They usually save that towards later in the draft. If the Thor's not open, not something they're going to prioritize. So I would assume we see an ADC pick here. You also have the option to try and grab a support before the next wave of bans, which isn't a bad call, considering Charon's already gone. But you got good team fight presence with the Raijin. You got that objective shove you were talking about, and they will grab that ADC. This time around, Panda Cat looked pretty solid on the Uller. I was asking, you know, is this a pick that's going to be, you know, back in the meta? Is it going to be strong? Didn't see just super oppressive damage, but, you know, once Uller gets online, once you get 2-3 items, really 3 or 4 items, honestly, that's when he can start roaming freely and just half-healthing just about everyone he runs into.
So we do have Uller, Raijin, Ama as the top 3 for the Leviathans. Gladiators, Sol, Charon, and Morgan Le Fay. Flexibility options with the Morgan. We have seen it already this set go to the solo lane. Do know that Jengaru also likes to play that god in the mid lane, so keep our eyes where the Gladiators go with these selections. Get into the next round of bans with no pick for Kirmi just yet. We'll see a little bit more target thrown his way. It was already the Ratatoskr before. Thor was banned by the Gladiators, but can be taken out of Kirmi's god pool. But Erlong Shen and Daji, I think a sneaky one here, up against what you're already going with. You have Ama and Raijin both have CC meeting their ultimates. The Uller would get punished pretty heavily by the Daji if those beads were down. And plus the Daji, I think may have been a bit of a sleeper pick in the jungle as of recent. We've kind of seen like shades of players going towards the Daji, but hasn't really kind of brought her back into meta just yet. But the few players who have gotten her hands on it made this god look really strong.
Yeah, I mean, she's always going to have good damage, but she was just a counter pick for a bit. Starting to see more of her, but still not going to be that god you want to pick into just about every draft. You still have to watch out for some of these cleanses or just, you know, CC immunity in general. Daji and Erlong taken away. The Atlas is the hover here for the Leviathans. Was going to be a little bit more damage. You are still looking towards that support pick. Maybe you let Adapting sort of counter what Kirmi tries to go to. But no, they switch it up. Just grab the Mercury here and now. Going to be some great damage late game. You don't have to worry about double dipping into crit, assuming that Uller just goes for the full burst build, which is usually the call. Leviathans, crazy objective shred as well with the Amaterasu, the Merc. You got the extra Raijin damage with the Uller in the back. That is going to be hard to deal with. We talked about burst. Uller also has a pretty good bit of burst, as long as you're, you know, near him when he's got, you know, that extra burst damage online. Not going to outburst Supernova, But if you can CC Soul and keep her away, not going to be a bad look, just trying to go for Fire Giants and things like that.
Maybe a bit of an interesting pivot here for the Gilded Gladiators, Trelly. Morgan Le Fay, Charon, and Horus, along with the Serket now, for jungle into Kirmi. It's one of the picks he falls back to. But it means that we might not be seeing this mage go over to the soul lane this time. So between the Charon and the Horus would be what I imagine kind of flexing over towards that soul lane or in the support role. Which of those would you rather see in Jake's hand, and which of them would you prefer for Kana over to the opposite side?
That is a good question. As far as solo lane goes, you're up against an Ama, so both Horus and Charon can exist there. It's not going to be, you're not going to be getting out pressured. Ama really is not picked because she gets insane pressure over in that lane. But I think I prefer Awesome Jake on the Charon just because he likes to get aggressive on that pick. It can get in, it can get out. Sometimes Jake overextends, and Charon is one of the more survivable Guardians you have. Of course, Horus can do the same, but it's a little bit better clear. He's going to be able to trade decently well into Ama. It's a toss-up, but I think I would prefer throwing Charon in Awesome Jake's hands just by the fact that he's played it a fair bit.
Ganesh now hovered for the Leviathans. We haven't seen very much Ganesh as of recent. All throughout Phase 1 and ramping up to Masters, this was the god to go to just about every single time. Very beginning of this phase and the kickoff, we were still seeing a good bit of the elephant. And then it just kind of feels like Ganesh fell off the face of the earth for a while there. For the last couple of weeks, not really been seeing anybody go towards this god. How do you kind of feel about the Ganesh with the rest of the composition Leviathans have? I know that he did just eat a nerf as well with this most recent patch. I believe his ultimate getting a bit of damage taken away from it, or a bit of that prot shred removed from it, and then also kind of toning down the slow a bit. Do you think that those are enough to really hurt this god, or are those nerfs not really that big of a deal to him?
It's a bit annoying, but the real reason you're grabbing Ganesh here is to counter things like the Horus, like the Serket, that want to blink to the backline, that want to try and die for your team, and they just get owned, right? The Serket's job gets so much more difficult trying to use channeled abilities like Deathbane into a composition like this where, yeah, Raijin is going to have a rough time, right? You have so much CC to try and cancel Thunder Crash, but what happens when you're near Ganesh during all that? You don't get it off. You have to have your beads up. You have to have something like a Magi's. And that is very annoying to try and deal with. So that's probably the call here for the Leviathan. Sure, it's going to be another level of shred towards an objective. You can just use Dharmic Pillars offensively as well. But it's more so for the CC, for the peel for the team, and just to try and deal with a little bit of the dive that the Gilded Gladiators have. It's a pretty solid pick to get in that 10th pick slot as well. You know, you wait to see what the Gladiators have. You see them pick things like the Serket, and you go, oh, all right, you know, maybe I was going to pick something else, but now this Ganesh just looks a lot better.
Well, we've been seeing, at least as of recent, a lot of the solo Raijin, so we've kind of been seeing this mixed style of build. How does that kind of change now moving over from the soul lane into the mid lane? Is this now kind of slanting more towards that full damage? Are you still putting a little bit of defense? How does the build now kind of change back for the Raijin, pivoting over towards a mid role?
I would imagine it changes just a little bit. You're probably still getting the breastplate just because everyone's building breastplate at the moment. It's still very strong, but I don't imagine you go into like the Genjis and like the 2 or 3 damage or 10 times. It's probably just the breastplate and then full damage after that. You get punished a little bit more, you do more damage, your positioning, you have to watch out a bit more. The playstyle is similar, you just can't get as aggressive, and you know, still have that big burst opportunity as well if you're hitting Raiju and Taiko drums and, you know, chaining all your abilities together.
Yeah, not as tanky, but maybe hitting just a little bit harder for that god, so be fun to see what the Raijin more damage style does now. I've started to grow accustomed as to what he can do over the soul lane, so it's almost a breath of fresh air bringing him back over to the mid role, seeing the Amaterasu kind of slot herself back into this one, and then really for the Gilded Gladiators, seeing what they can do with their double magic damage dealers here. They have the Soul and the Morgan Le Fay to try and answer back here up against this Leviathan's composition. Yeah, I think the dual lane has kind of been where the strength has been lying with the Gladiators in the last couple of fights and these last couple of matchups. So we'll have to see if the Gladiators can pull things back and get a win for themselves in game number 3, or is this going to be a sweep for the Leviathan? Let's jump right into game 3.
Gladiators with their backs up against the wall here. They've got to pull off a reverse sweep if they want to find the win in this one. You've got Frog, you've got Mifflin, still Doug taking us through the map. and some composition differences to be sure in the pick and ban phase for game number 3. One thing I was a fan of, we said that they had to ban away the Chernobog. They put themselves in first pick, so they make the Leviathans ban away the Chernobog, which is, it's fine. It was banned. That was the important bit, is that it was taken away from somebody. But that forces, another couple interesting picks, because the Rat was taken away as well. Kirmi makes his way back onto the Circuit. We've seen him on that quite a bit before in the past. And then this Horus for Khan and the Amaterasu for Fine. Okay, we are back to Warriors in the Soul Lane.
Yeah, are Warriors back in the Soul Lane, or are we back to them? I think there's a certain delineation between those two, and I think back to them probably just correct, considering Mages might just be a little bit higher value. Amaterasu, though, certainly at the top of that Warrior value list, and Horus used to be real good in the Soul Lane. I'm not so certain he is anymore, and back when you used to see him a little bit more consistently, it was generally that Golden Blade in first slot to boost up that clear, maybe Gooseberries. Just enough that you don't necessarily need to go towards it. Otherwise, Mercury, sure, an adaptation, sure, not exactly directly at the top of that meta, but still certainly at the top of Adapting's personal meta. We've seen him play this one a whole lot in the past. Generally, it's Rage first slot, maybe Demon Blade, maybe Deathbringer, depending on how much he's feeling himself second slot, and it's run it down immediately afterwards. Until then, though, generally a little bit weaker. So perhaps some opportunities for Kirmi to look for fights on map until that point. And even looking at the Good Gladiators composition as a whole, it's very aggressive, high pressure duo lane, decent scaling in mid, high gank potential jungler, very good at taking 1v1s up against Adapting or isolated picks in jungle team fights. Seems to me the Good Gladiators might just be looking to play a good deal faster here.
This mid 2v2 is one where we've seen some sparks in the last couple of games, but we'll be hard-pressed to find any real aggression, especially on that Mercury. Looking for maybe a little bit more macro play, maybe trying to catch Kana off guard. If you can get the 2 out early on, maybe able to catch him if they combo the CC correctly, but Kana...
Close.
Wow, they're taking a tower shot. Kana's got to make sure he can't punish right there, but an attempted gank before the Warriors can really get their tankiness online, and Adapting trying to find an early lead, but won't find success.
That was a crazy attempt from Fine OK. Tries to time his dash to interrupt Kana's. If it connects, Kana's just dead. We saw the risk, though. Delivering himself, Fine OK that is, to the tower. Turning around a good deal of that pressure. Had plenty of potions left in pocket, though. Sitting on 3 in pocket still, as opposed to the 0 for Kana. Means that he's allowed to play a little bit more aggressively with his HP long. Fine OK willing to take a risky play there. If it connects, though, we're talking about perhaps one of the highest execution first bloods so far this year.
Hear me. Under some pressure, trying to find some farms, stealing away in the enemy jungle. But that brings us back towards, well, it would bring us back towards the mid lane, but Adapting's doing the same thing. The speed buff invade for Kirmi on the deep left, and Adapting, he doesn't even want the blue buff invade. He wants the opposite speed buff. So both junglers looking to take something away. Difference is Jengaru might be here for the defense of his speed buff, and sure enough, Adapting will not be successful in stealing that away. Meanwhile, Kirmi's just continuing to grab the enemy farm.
Yeah, fair play to Jengaru. Great map awareness. Keeps things a little bit more even. Adapting will be able to take away at least the mass camp, I believe. Perhaps not. Instead, tucks his tail, grabs some neutral farm, won't be grabbing that red buff. Both speed buff's gone. Gonna significantly slow down this Mercury. Good stuff to the Good Gladiators, playing well around their macro. Shinto farming up on the map himself. Wasn't quite there in time to defend up against Kirmi's invade. So now Circuit, significant advantage.
Yeah, bringing us back towards the mid lane, though, which is where I was trying to get to. And this matchup is the same mage matchup that we saw in game number 2, but instead of being in the solo lane this time, we've got it in the mid lane. Trelly mentioned on the desk some of the build changes that might come through. You expect, hold that thought though. Awesome Jake trying to find some aggression, and Kirmi playing around the wall on the jump in, but the jump's away, the dash away from Rongu as well. Not able to find any aggression there, despite trying from the Gilded Gladiators. And there's the aggression I was talking about. Now that they're in mid, maybe a little bit more volatility from these two mages.
Higher damage output, a little bit less safe in lane as well. Lincoln from Kirmi wants to fight up against Adapting. Adapting no crit. He's got to play real smart here.
don't know if he does want the fight against Adapting. He tries to take the auto trade, but the ultimate will not find the last hit of damage. And Kiermi, now he's got to try and find a way out. Rongu, he's used the CC. Just a couple more seconds before that would come up, but not in time to punish anybody. And 5 minutes in, still without first blood.
Good attempt from Kiermi, though. Taking a fight before the crit is available. Jankaru.
Woo!
Is he out?
Adapting's got to be careful.
Yo.
He's in deep in the enemy jungle now. And Kiermi, he's trapped between two members. The only hope here is if he's able to get first blood, but he will fall in the enemy jungle. An attempted cleanup kill from Adapting does not go his way.
And only Adapting's going for Sonic Boom there. That is a high-risk play. Risk of losing first blood, clearly. Well opted there. Great stuff by Kiermi. Sticks around, turns things around there, too. Jangaru, of course, survives just barely on his own. Puts out a whole lot of pressure into both Ronnie and Shinto himself. Jangaru's making an argument for best on team right now for the Guild of Gladiators, which is wild to say, considering he has just made the move from the SCC. I've been massively impressed by their mid laner so far, and he continues to do so here. I mean, he's taking the 1v1s up against Shinto. We saw him force the Aegis just a few moments ago, holding his own.
Yeah, attempted purple buff invade. You're absolutely right, though. Jangaru, I mean, when he initially joined this team, was bringing a lot of pressure, not only on the picks, but I think he brings a force to the comms as well. Calling plays, forcing engagements, being one to know his damage and what he can output in the middle of a team fight. Really going to benefit you on those close calls. And that's where the Guild of Gladiators have struggled, right? Around these mid-game fights, the wishy-washy, you catch 4 people in the jungle, you have small 4v4s, 3v3s. And that's where they've got to look to improve, because, I mean, we're already a little bit early on into game number 3, and once again, the Guild of Gladiators not as big of a lead as in game 2, but they're certainly holding on to a little bit more pressure and control in this one.
A lot of that neutral farm, a lot of it coming off the back of that double speed buff invade as well. Just severely outpacing Adapting in the jungle right now is Kiermi. Adapting now with Rage does pose at least a bit of a threat in the fight. If he gets lucky, could just turn things around entirely. Has to play cautiously here. Kiermi, good blink.
Blink, and the damage might be too much. Time perfectly for Jangaru and Kiermi, and they grab Adapting again. The only 2 deaths on the Leviathans, and they're all onto Adapting, although that might change, as death could have come the way of Kana, and it might actually still. Look at this rotation from the mid laner. Shinto on this right-hand side of the map, so Kana has to be careful, but I think he's aware of it, playing a little bit safe.
He is. I mean, he's going to play safe regardless, just because he doesn't want to take the fight up against Final K anymore. Doesn't exactly have that safety. But good eyes from Shinto, realizing if Kana gets into Taiko drum range, would have just been his life. Instead, Final K just gets to benefit, enjoy a little bit of pressure over in that soul lane. Good eyes on Kiermi. Ahead of the rotation once more, but once they're in the tower, should just about seal that gank. So instead, it's a reset back to neutral. You really want to continue controlling Adapting. Adapting is going to be an issue eventually. This game does have the potential to go a bit longer. I'm not seeing the same level of objective control from either team, which means we're not probably going to see a 10-minute Gold Fury. We're not going to see the double Pyromancer Gold Fury trade on cooldown. Should slow down the overall pace of this game, and if that's the case, Adapting given a little bit more time to farm will become that massive threat on map. So stick to him. Don't allow him to stack up that rage. Don't allow him to collect as much as you can in the jungle. Serket's got a pretty significant advantage at this point of the game in particular in that 1v1.
Attempted purple buff invade successful for the Guild of Gladiators, and they'll keep up that pressure on the left-hand side of the map. Adapting doing what he can to stay in this game. Trying to steal away a little bit of enemy farm, gets the blue buff, I think, successfully, but I mean, Kiermi is doing his best to mirror it on the other side of the map. I think he's stolen the enemy back left speed buff like 3 times in a row now, which as a jungler can be the most infuriating thing, to just constantly come back to a speed buff that is not there. But there are 2 in the game, so Adapting at least maintains the ability to pick up the other one that he's been securing. But I mean, Kiermi still maintaining that lead, and he's the one forcing a lot of these engagements. Look at this positioning from Panicat. He is so far up on the map. And as an Ullr Kirmi's here, he's got the blink in, just a little bit of damage needed, but the peel is there. Not enough though. Kirmi finds PandaCat for being up so far on the map.
Panda getting a bit over-aggressive there. Not even exactly playing around his power spikes. Hasn't stacked up the Transcendence. Hasn't got that Hydras just yet either. Does at least hold on to the beads, realizing, all right, well, maybe I could walk a little bit further away, but that's all it would get me, considering what it was available to him. And so holds on to the Relic. Next rotation from Kirmi won't be as easy. But this is a concerning trend, considering how much control the Gilded Gladiators have had in PvP. You'd expect this lead to be a bit more significant. Very effective farm splitting, I think, from the Leviathans up until this point. In particular, I think they're really doing a good job of being present for the neutrals, or at least threatening the backs, as you said. He's kept himself in a pretty decent position. And with all that said, though, the dual lane now for the Gilded Gladiators being so far ahead might begin to open the door for Gold Fury plays. Not so certain they'll be willing to do it just in neutral. Might have to come off the back of a pick, but that's what Surket's for.
Yeah, Awesome Jake, he was one starting out these objective pulls in game number 2. Of course, he had a Fafnir at that point. This time, though, he goes back to the Frenzy, and still, I mean, he loves this double stacking build as well. One of the few supports, I think, that consistently finds into the Prophetic, into the Thebes, and it's just because of how he plays. We talked about him being so aggressive, so ready to share, farm, ready to poke out. I mean, ultimately, once it gets finished up, he'll be one of the tankiest players on the map for being so far forward. But, I mean, he's also a driver for these neutral objectives. And, wow, Snoopy drops. He did successfully steal away the shield buff at the very least in trade for Supernova. But, I mean, now that Jake has rotated out of this lane, I expect, even more sparks to fly. Kirmi plus Jake means more pressure.
Yeah, it would be very nice. And it is worth noting that Charon just having so much range in his kit does lend itself well to Prophetic Cloak. Should have that stacked up relatively soon, probably the next 10 or so minutes. We'll struggle a little bit more so to find some of those physical stacks. But if adapting, starting to make some of those rotations, if Final K's there, he'll have his opportunities. Leviathans seem unperturbed so far with the pace. Have not exactly forced any engagements. It's on the Gilded Gladiators to get things started. If they want to push their lead, seems to me to be a bit of a bait here. Exactly a full commit to the Gold Fury.
No ultimate from Snoopy. Used that Supernova a little bit earlier. They can't tank it up. They don't have the shred that they once did, but they rotated the Soul Laner over your Kana. And in fact, he's up pretty far forward. The ultimate pulls him back, and the beads get forced from the Horus. And it's right around the time as Beacon spawns as well. You've got all 5 members from both squads over here on the left side of the map. And Leviathans all the pressure towards this Beacon. The Gladiators try to start something around the Gold Fury, but not enough damage, not willing to commit to it.
Yeah, they were hoping the Leviathans would panic walk in. And if you're praying on the Leviathans to panic, likely will go unanswered. Levi showing his presence now on that left-hand side. Snoopy playing a bit more defensively, realizing how many Chaos Team members are here. Will give up this shield buff. Thought maybe we see the Leviathans try themselves to pull the Gold Fury. They haven't got the craziest burn, but it's been a while since we got a chance to talk about it. Dharmic Pillars is really good on objectives. Defense shred, constant tick damage, one of the highest damage ability in the game. Instead, though, another reset back to neutral. Still waiting on a few pretty significant power spikes on the side of the Leviathan. Short sword for adapting. One of the worst feeling tier 2 items in the game. Going to become one of the best feeling tier 3s, though.
PandaCat under some pressure, and beads get burned early on as they trade away the wave from Awesome Jake just to find that small engagement. The mid laner's back towards mid, and Kirmi trying to wait for somebody to step up as they still are looking to bait this Gold Fury, trying to force the Leviathans into a bad position, but with not enough people over here to try and find it, they won't. Shinto instead finds a solo kill onto Jangaru, who they try to bait the Gold Fury. They let Jangaru go back alone to mid.
Yeah, but you got to trust him to take that 1v1. Unfortunately, Shinto, one of the best in the league in role, lets him know, hey, buddy, SPL, not quite as easy as the SCC. Takes that 1v1 in 15 seconds of the grayscale for Jang to think about his mistakes. Kirmi might just join him. Dharmic Pillars is good, but it just separates the fight. All that space created. Final K making the rotation. Gold Fury certainly on the chopping block. Go to Gladiators, no, but how much steal potential do they really have?
This is a tough one to step up to, and sure enough, the Gladiators do not make it in time. The Gold Fury over the Leviathans, and they step up and take back control of the gold lead. Feels like when they find the pressure, they find it solidly. They're even continuing on the chase. Fine, okay, he didn't rotate back. He's still here. And Snoopy forced under the tier 1 tower. Awesome Jake under some pressure as well to jump in from Panda Cat. But, I mean, this is a full-on chase. You're forced into the wave, but Jake, he's still trying to stay alive. And the 3 versus 2 looks like it will not have the legs to keep going. Leviathans just get the Gold Fury and back off.
I'm surprised Leviathans even attempt that. That is a dangerous dive for low returns, even if it should connect. Maybe you knock down a tier 1 tower, but haven't already taken the Fury. Not exactly worth the massive risk of a fight afterward. Levi's now have wrestled control back from the Gilded Gladiators. Haven't quite found it in the PvP, but PvE has done them a whole lot of good, and power spikes have been reached. Adapting 2 items deep in the build, but they're 2 impact items. Will only get stronger once he starts to get involved in some of these fights. Needs those stacks on rage, assists, kills, doesn't matter. Needs to get him somewhere.
Sonic Boom from Adapting, and there's no tier 1 tower here. Kirmi has no bastion of safety, and he will get taken down. The rage stacks add up, and they will continue to add up throughout this game. I'm looking at the other builds as well. Serket also building into that rage. Kirmi picks it up, and ever since he hasn't been able to find that pressure that he was having in the early game. He doesn't have a stack on it.
No, not just yet. Sure, opportunities will be there. Here's the thing, though. Adapting with his attack speed stim. Real good with crit on objectives. Pyromancer is going to go fast.
Gotta go fast, and it will go fast. Atlantis Leviathans with no contestation take down the Pyromancer, and that's after the Gold Fury they got a little bit earlier. They've solidified this lead, brought the experience back to even, swung the gold in their favor. And this is the mid-game point that the Gladiators have struggled with. And you gotta be asking the questions. How, if you're the Gladiators, I mean, how do you get back into this game? What are you doing to prepare for the next Gold Fury spawn?
You could take pressure in the jungle, perhaps look to catch out Adapting. He uses a lot of his resources just before that fight to secure the kill on Akirmi, both Blink and Beads. Off that means that should Serket make contact and get a little bit lucky with those crits, needs to be lucky. No rage stacks just yet. Could just eliminate Adapting. There's a lot of volatility in that 1v1 matchup. Otherwise, get out of there a little bit faster. Maybe play that poke battle a little bit more so. Leverage some of that sustain that Horus has for the rest of his team. Leviathans, though, job's a little bit simpler. If they get to the Gold Fury, if they get to Fire Giant, they get there first. Might just be able to turn things on their head. Adapting, realizing how dangerous it is. Dashes out, but Kirmi attempts it. Loses out on that blink. He's tried for it, wants that 1v1, but it's not quite given up.
Fine, okay. Behind the members of the Gladiators. Has to be careful here as the CC comes through and the beads get burned from the Soul Laner. As now the beacon might be the focus. 5 members strong here for the Gilded Gladiators. And Adapting and Panda Cat stuck in the left side of the jungle. They want to try and come in and contest this beacon, but that won't be the objective they're focused on. I think everybody's eyes a little bit more glued to this Primal Fury. Right before it spawns, that's when they choose to go in. Awesome Jake is the target, but they turn damage back onto Rongu. He drops down to 40% HP, and Fine Okay forced to dash in just to make the Gladiators retreat. They'll find safety under the tier 1, but with this Pyromancer, Gold Fury rather, right around the corner, I mean, this is dangerous for the Gladiators.
It is. Don't want Jake to take too much damage before the objective spawns up, before it becomes feasible. At half HP, gotta be concerned here. Panda Cat shielded himself. Kirmi acting as a wall, but Primal Fury certainly the target.
Certainly indeed. Shinto on the backside. They don't know that he's here, but they go to the Gladiators. They secure the objective. They take down Jake in the meantime. A 1 for objective trade, make it a 2 for objective trade as Shinto finds a double kill, and they might not be done. This tier 1 tower, little to stand in the way of adapting. He's gonna try and get to the back, and Kirmi with a little bit of a lazy back will make it a 3rd kill in trade for the Levi's, plus a tier 1 tower, plus some enemy farm. I mean, the Levi's, it feels like they're not even upset about losing that Fury.
It's 2 tier 1s, you got Kana's beads, perhaps a tier 2 as well. Make it 2 tier 2s because no one's defending on left. And Leviathans have absolutely crushed the good Gladiators on their offense once more. You got the Gold Fury, but at what cost? It cost you quite literally everything. The Leviathans now find themselves in the exact same position that they have in both games 1 and 2. 19 minutes in, complete control of the map. Pyromancer spawning up soon. No runic bombs in play. Don't exactly need them though. Every single one of Adapting's auto attacks starting to look like a runic bomb, especially on these objectives. Has a little bit of penetration now, serrated edge, lifesteal. A lot of potential for Adapting to start going absolutely crazy in some of these team fights. The good Gladiators just have not found their opportunities. I think that pick-focused playstyle can work out for them. Kana, high single target CC, undrable knockup, Kirmi, of course, on that Circuit can get things started. They have not been given those opportunities. Leviathan's playing very intelligently, moved up consistently. Like this, though, he's able to get it.
They are able to pull the Pyromancer and get it before anybody on the Levi's can respond. That will, though, potentially open up a window onto the Fire Giant here. This is 20 minutes in, but you gotta remember, a crit Mercury here to shred this one down. You gotta back off from Jangaru, so he'll be a little bit delayed into this objective, but you gotta be careful of the bait. The Levi's, at the drop of a hat, are ready to turn this fight on its head and try and find a different target, but it might be too low at this point to do it. They'll try and secure, and they will find the Fire Giant, and the fight afterwards. They take down Kana, and Kirmi is double-digit HP. Awesome Jake caught between members of the Levi's, and a Sonic Boom finds its way all the way to the backline. 2 already down for the Glads, and the remaining 3 trying desperately to make it back to the Phoenix, but the Leviathans, they end up with the fire.
Yeah, the Glads really needed Jake's ultimate there for Fire Giant defense, but having used it just previously to confirm the Pyromancer and heat check the map, lose out on one of their best initiation tools. The good Gladiators walk up and say, well, we can get into the Fire Giant pit, but we can't stop them.
It's a 5 versus 3 here, and massively favored for the Levi's as the Phoenix begins to fall, and Shinto's not even on it. He's looking for the damage and finds a little bit through the wall. Trade back is there from Jangaru, but not enough to take down the mid laner unless they've overstayed a little bit. Kana, he's in on the ultimate. Fino-K forced to dash away, but Pandacat has been left for fodder for the rest of the squad. Kirmi has to go big. He's looking for the CC, but Fino-K's ultimate forces a disengage. Shinto will make it back to base, and the rest of the Levi's are on the retreat.
Yeah, good retreat there from the Leviathans. Really rallying around Fino-K, leveraging that additional movement speed from Amaterasu. Pandacat, of course, just dead. Not quite able to walk away from that massive wave from Awesome Jake. Base defense decent there, but the Leviathans haven't broken the base so quickly on their Fire Giant play. Even having lost it on Pandacat, will still have pretty decent threat on the other 2 Phoenixes. The ADC is the battery of your team, though. That is the best one to have Fire Giant. He's doing the most damage to the structures. But it's not EFG, so it's not exactly back-breaking there to lose that either. I think should the Gilded Gladiators group up, play on the 5v5 in Phoenix, things could look a little bit better for them. Dangerous positions, though, isn't it? Playing this far up around the Gold Fury. Okay. Fishing for whatever he can. Won't go that far on his own, and the Gilded Gladiators give up space.
You gotta be careful they do not find themselves caught out in the enemy jungle. The Levi's, though, this feels like a very similar position as they've been in the last couple of games. They find a first Fire Giant, they use it to push out a little bit, they grab all the tier 2s. In this case, they grab all the tier 2s and a Phoenix. In fact, I think they got most of the tier 2s a little bit earlier on. And it feels even that much better to have control of the fight this time around, because they still have a minute on this Fire Giant, only 23 minutes into the game, and a couple of waves to potentially push this down if they want to try and force a fight on their terms. It's a 4-1 split for the time being, but with this wave letting it go and just allowing the Glads to clear it, they're only going to have one more wave worth of this Fire Giant time.
Let's see what they can do with it. 3-2 split. Dharmic Pillars to separate. Phoenix is taking no damage.
Yeah, they're on the engage, but I mean, they're focused on the damage way more than the Phoenix. Kirmi gets the ultimate away and adapting, looking for the Sonic Boom, but will not find it. The left Phoenix down a little bit low, and the mid Phoenix, it's only Kana here to defend. They have to back off, but don't count them out just yet. They're still sticking around, waiting for this next minion wave. The Titan on its way out of the base in left. And it's still the 3 members of the Leviathans here in left to push this one down if they so choose. And Fire Giant, it's off in 10 seconds or so. They've stuck around much longer than I expected them to.
Leviathan's still relatively healthy. It's just Panda Cat, for the most part, suffering in the HP department, but has sustained built-in a passive. Might just be able to get back to fighting strength before too long. Mid Phoenix down to half HP. Might be a decent place to put some of that pressure, but with Fire Giant worn off, it's more about the reset. Chaos Titan will put a lot of pressure on map on its own, so the Leviathans might make use of that time by pulling the Pyromancer or pressuring out that mid wave and then getting ready, setting up some of that vision around the Fire Giant itself. Go to Gladiators, keep the game alive, keep their base alive. Right side bird will be up before too long. Decent look at a neutral territory team fight, I think, now for the Go to Gladiators. The nature of the Gladiators' initiation, though, being so single-target focused, primarily focused around Kana, might just make it difficult for them to start up the engagement unless they find themselves in a position where they can one-shot first point of contact. And that means, can you one-shot Final K off of CC chain? It is wrong you under risk of death should Kana make contact. And I think at this point, we're not exactly there. There's a good amount of penetration stacked up on Jang, so good poke potential. Go to Gladiators, give up the Fire Giant once more, completely put all their eggs in the base defense basket.
Look at the mid Phoenix as well. Kirmi, in addition, on the right-hand side. Oh, Shinto finds the rampage, and Kirmi loses his life just for trying to find the pick onto the mid laner. Fine, okay, gets a little bit of that damage in mid, but other than that, it's a free Fire Giant for the Leviathans. Let's go into a listen-in as they look to push down this bird.
I got you, pal.
They get the Phoenix, and I thought the Glads might have fought back, but without Kirmi, they have to pick their spots perfectly, and this may be it. The Dharmic Pillars drop, and the Phoenix down to 20% HP, but adapting, he's made his way into the back line and is getting punished for it. Jingaru finds a huge pick, and Shinto, he may fall down as well. A double kill for the mid laner, and the Gladiators push forward. A defense for the left Phoenix. They'll lose the bird, but they'll get a couple of picks, might make it a third, as Jingaru does it all for the Gladiators, continuing to push forward. They might even be on the chase.
So the Skies only takes them to mid. So the tanky front line of the Leviathans get to maintain their lives this time. But you're right, Jingaru comes up massive. Takes the 1v1 up against Adapting, and it is a 1v1, completely isolated in the Titan room. Adapting eats Dragonflight, takes too much damage immediately afterward. From there, Jingaru transitions to the team fight, utilizing the last few shots of his ultimate, and secures a good deal of damage into both Panda Cat and Shinto. Great stuff for the Good Gladiators from the brink, but the Leviathans had already done so much up until that point that best the Good Gladiators could hope for is a few towers and maybe desperately clawing at that gold lead to drag it back within a 4-digit range. Not there yet, still in the 5-digit.
Yeah, this is rough. I mean, they're still so far behind. In fact, Fino K and Wrongu, they're still looking to fight. It's 2v3 in favor of the Gladiators here, just in terms of manpower. But the tankiness of the Leviathans frontline, they'll be joined by not too much later by the rest of the squad if they stick around. But they've got to deal with these fire minions as well, because regardless of that defense, they take down 3, sure. They get a couple of towers, sure, but they still lose all 3 of their birds, and that's going to make future attempts to have a defense like that or step up to this next EFG. I mean, those attempts are going to be so difficult with 3 streams of fire minions pouring down each lane.
It also changes the rules of engagement for the next team fight. No longer is it, oh, we can play defensively around this structure. It's, oh, we need to defend the only structure we still have left. Weakened, by the way, that Titan down about 90% already. So now the Gilded Gladiators need to figure out where they draw the line in the sand, and I think it's essentially right outside the base. Should the Leviathans be allowed into the Titan room? Dharmic Pillars separates, CC immunity from Shinto and FineOK going to be pouring in damage. All the while, Pandacat from downtown can snipe out the Titan itself. Gilded Gladiators, if they want to keep the game alive, they're going to have to take the fight outside of their fountain room, outside of the throne room. All the while, the Leviathan's going to be benefiting from just superior minion waves, starting to work their way all the way across the map. Right side pushed up significantly, left side not too far behind it. A little while on the Fire Giant respawn, about a minute and a half, 80 seconds to play with here. I don't think the Leviathans necessarily needed if they can find a pick on map, or if the Gilded Gladiators reveal themselves on that left-hand side. Kirmi just now knocking down that shield. Could have been an opportunity to walk in. But the Levi's have never once been accused of panic ending. That's just not their MO. Might just wait out this next minute on fire. Do the Gilded Gladiators step into neutral territory? I just can't think that's the case. Any fight that happens there is just going to look like a Leviathan's win.
I almost feel like they have to, though, right? I mean, this is enhanced Fire Giant, and Leviathans have looked good with regular Fire Giant. They've looked great without any Fire Giant. And I feel like if you let them get close to your base, like you said, you've got Dharmic Pillars, you've got CC immune ults, you've got the ability to just walk into the Titan room. I don't know that they can stand out front of these Phoenixes and fight an EFG-empowered Leviathans that's already 15k ahead.
Yeah, but backdoor protections being the biggest thing on EFG, your Phoenixes are already weakened, you're not defending them anyway. I don't think it's a massive deal. The only thing that's really changing up is the Leviathans will be a bit stronger, but the strength of this Gilded Gladiators composition at keeping those minion waves at bay can slow things down pretty significantly. And walking in, even losing one person on a Fire Giant defense, even assuming a steal, let's say the Gilded Gladiators walk up, steal it away, one person dies, that's GG. The Leviathan's just going to walk in. So I think all in on defending as 5 while you still have at least some semblance of safety. All 3 Phoenixes back up now for the Gilded Gladiators. Probably just their best look.
32 minutes in, and neither Rage has been stacked up yet for these junglers. Adapting's the closest. He's got 4 stacks, and if this is a one fight for the Leviathans, expect him to finish that off. But Kirmi, he's only been able to have 1 single stack onto that Rage, maybe slowing down the aggression there from this crit Cirquet, but this may be where the EFG starts to come into play. That left Phoenix, no challenge for FineOK, just walks in, and now he is positioning behind the entirety of the Gladiators.
Does will make it really difficult to hold that mid Phoenix. Threat of dazzling offensive, just preventing any bit of aggression from Kirmi. Will walk himself in. Kirmi doesn't have the damage to stop him, and mid Phoenix gone now too. Gotta draw that line in the sand somewhere. Gladiators take too much poke on right. It's all going to come down to the last fight.
All 3 Phoenixes now fall for the Gladiators. And it's a full-on reset. You're right, for the Leviathans. They want to get some small power spikes, maybe get that elixir of power for Shinto, so he's going to have that extra boost. They still have a runic bomb in pocket for Rangu. And I mean, this is so difficult to stop, because if you are on the Leviathans in this position, if you just press W through anywhere, I don't know how the Gladiators defend it unless they find you even outside of their Phoenix zone.
I mean, the Gladiators have a lot of damage to play with. Yes, the win condition for the Leviathans is getting into the Titan room, but if it were that simple, just W through, they would have done it already. They have to be concerned about Jangaru. We already saw what he was able to do on last defense. So much damage coming from him. This is dangerous, though. Neutral territory fight. Snoopy's too far away to follow up.
dash in from Kirmi. He takes half of his HP already. Shinto in on the damage, and Kana will not make it out alive. Final K finds Jangaru, and everything falls apart for the Gilded Gladiators. 4 down, make it 4 with this Snoopy kill. It is only Kirmi left on the map, and he will not be able to do enough to defend against 5. Finishing is all but a formality at this point, as still 4 versus 1 here. A Runic Bomb, ultimate's available. Kirmi will do what he can, but it will be the Leviathans in a 3-0 sweep.
Yeah, that fight was really ugly there. Kirmi jumps the gun on initiation, says, all right, we got to catch him in the jungle. We're going to kill the first guy. First dude I see, he's dead. Sees someone completely surrounded by their own teammates and says, well, going up anyway. They're probably not going to want to do that in the future. Snoopy was all the way on the left side of the map. Jangaru was too far away to follow up. Fight separated immediately afterward by adapting. Sonic boom right through that back line. No follow-up for Kirmi, and everything falls apart. Tough stuff for the Gilded Gladiators. Just could not find their footing in this set.
Yeah, I got to admit, for all the Gilded Gladiators' faults, I'm still liking a lot what I'm seeing from Jangaru. I still think he's a bright spot on this team. A triple kill on a base defense, and they look very bright in spots. They've got a base defense to put up. Their early game is solid. They found themselves off to a couple of leads, but ultimately the Leviathans stand a little bit too tall for the Gladiators to fight back. They find the successful mid-game fights, great plays around the neutral objectives. I mean, this team is where they belong, top 3 of the league.
Hailed as top 3 and proven it every single step of the way. The Leviathans clearly have got their game plans. They execute well on it. Can even get a little bit off kilter with the selections, but still play their exact game identity. Love everything I saw from the Leviathans. I really have no notes.
Yeah, no, I mean, they should be feeling good after that 3-0 sweep as well, I'm sure. That'll do it for me and Mifflin on the cast, though. We'll throw it back to J-Mac and Trelly on the desk.
That's right, a 3-0 sweep for the Leviathans knocks himself a much-needed victory because there still is contention for them to jump up into that very top seed towards the end of the phase here. And getting these wins are the most important ones against the seeds that are a little bit lower. And I have to say, a clean 3-0 here for the Leviathans. You know, game number 2 starts off a little bit rough against the Gladiators. Game number 3, kind of similar, but not to the same degree. The team fighting and the sieging, I think, is where a little bit of the struggles came from the Leviathans. We saw that echoed in a few of these games here, Trelly. And even in this last game here, the base defense by the Gladiators, great around left side Phoenix. It's just the other spots, you know, these scattered team fights these Glads are taking, just keep all these question marks lying around this team.
Yeah, I mean, a bit split as well. The Gilded Gladiators couldn't decide if they wanted to, you know, look for some free farms, sort of split push, try and defend, just try and keep the base alive, or if they were looking for, you know, some flanks in the jungle, trying to set up some ambushes, things like that. But the Leviathans, I mean, have been looking very solid to Myth's point. I do think that they've been getting these massive leads, and the Gilded Gladiators have been able to defend. You know, you were saying their base defense was decent. They were able to, you know, just keep the base alive, sort of drag this game out. But even with stalling as much as possible, some gold leads are just so insurmountable, right? You just can't come back for them no matter how much you try and defend. And maybe if the Gladiators were able to group up and sort of go for these ambushes together, it would have worked out a little bit better. But when the base is so broken, when you have so many Phoenixes down and you're sort of scrambling to catch up to these fire waves, it's just too difficult to try and come back from that. So I did like what I saw from the Leviathans today, as well as the fact that they were able to, you know, pull out some different god selections, like the Uller, for example, after some buffs. I was impressed. I like what I saw.
Yeah, I think the Leviathans have just had some very clean play, and even in the sets that they've lost over this phase, it's still very close matchups to theirs. So I think the Leviathans finding wins here, especially in essentially kind of the, not necessarily the gimme style of games, but those must wins against these lower seeded teams. Looking clean throughout this one, at 3-0 for themselves, 5-2 for Shinto on the Raijin, topping the damage charts for his team at 29,000. And I gotta agree, I like what we saw out of the Uller. It had a couple of shaky moments in these couple of games here, but still kind of, you know, shaking off the dust a little bit. Haven't seen the god in a while. Hasn't really been at the meta. Now having some of the changes to it, so trying to relearn how to kind of weave in all your stuff with it, like we've been seeing out of the Atlantis Leviathans. And we do have Adapting standing by. He's going to be here for our post-game interview.
That's right, we do have Adapting from the Leviathans. Congratulations on the 3-0 sweep. You guys are looking clean out there. And I want to ask you about your sort of game plan for the team as a whole, and maybe even specifically in that matchup. We saw a couple of times the Hounds get off to a little bit of an early lead, 2,000-3,000 gold, but I mean, you guys didn't feel like you forced anything, just played well around those neutral objectives. Is that where you're focused on, those mid-game and into late-game fights, and even if you fall behind a little bit in the early game, still staying confident?
Yeah, I mean, we felt like we had comps that would do well if we just scaled, so even if early game didn't go our way, then we knew that we were going to be fine going into mid to late game as long as we didn't let them get too far ahead. And also, the Glads are a pretty good early game team. Like, they do a lot of good early plays against actually a lot of teams. If you've noticed, they will have a lot of leads. They just haven't managed to transition them mid to late. But
I mean, those scaling comps have continued to work really, really well for you guys. And on your God Pool specifically, you've been one of the junglers in the league that has just